Welcome to Kelowna, Canada, home of the first ever North American Championship outside the United States. I'm Gary B. I'm here with Jack. We just got done with a course tour. Jack, so we started off with this downhill, which is a little bit unique for Spartan, but right into some boggy terrain. Who's that going to be advantage for on the women's side?
Yeah, if you're a really good technical runner, I would try to break away at the beginning, because right after
Welcome to Kelowna, Canada, home of the first ever North American Championship outside the United States. I'm Gary B. I'm here with Jack. We just got done with a course tour. Jack, so we started off with this downhill, which is a little bit unique for Spartan, but right into some boggy terrain. Who's that going to be advantage for on the women's side?
Yeah, if you're a really good technical runner, I would try to break away at the beginning, because right after you get through that boggy section, you're going to have some really tough single track, and it's just going to be tough to pass. Just a lot of bushwhacking and just really difficult to make a move for a little while at the beginning. You saw it, then you just go right up the mountain. I sort of think it's going to be a trap early on. You're going to see that mountain, you get out in a little bit more runnable area, you might push it a little bit, but there's a long way to go after that.
Yeah, so the first 5K is basically all uphill. The incline doesn't look bad,
Nope.
but it's up for, like I said, almost a full 5K. So on the women's side, who's going to pull ahead in that beginning part?
So we've seen every single time there's a race. Now that Nicole Miracle's not here, Emma Cook-Clark has kind of taken over the role of, I'm going to go out really fast, good luck hanging with me. She'll probably have a 1 to 2 minute lead, honestly, over everybody. Lindsay, Annie, every single person in the field at the beginning. But this technical terrain, like you mentioned, there's no woman in the sport who's better at downhill running than Lindsay Webster. So my opinion, she's just going to claw her way back a little bit. We have a couple really nice sections. Like, tell them about that section near the lake.
Yeah, so right near the lake, about the halfway mark, you're going from Atlas carry into the Z-wall, into the spear throw, right into slip wall, into dunk wall, which you're going to get your soul fully submerged.
It's going to be a little cold tomorrow as well. So,
And then you're on a big long hike in the mountains. So it's an interesting little gap there.
Yes.
And obstacles, there's no rest. Those 5 are basically
back to back. Your grip's going to go out, and it's going to be really unique to see what happens once you get out of that zone, because just like you mentioned, you have a couple of miles of just who's the best pure runner. It's not like you're running on a track, though. This is some technical. You're running over these tiny Christmas trees, going up and down some undulating terrain. Exactly. Then you get into the festival area at the end, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, just like Big Bear, how Lindsay and Emma, it's just whoever can capitalize on the other's mistakes in the festival area. My money's on Lindsay. How about you?
It's hard to vote against Lindsay.
Yeah.
Top 2, who rounds out the podium, though? There's a lot fighting for that 3rd spot.
Exactly. Annie Doobie, she's had an ankle injury. She was missed 2nd place all year last year, but this technical terrain is kind of scaring me. The other thing, Chris Rogloski should kind of be the next person you'd put in that mix. She just ran the Leadville 100 a week ago.
In just over 24 hours.
I don't know how you do a 100-mile race and then this crazy race less than a week later and expect to do well, but she'll do it like usual.
Yep.
But I'm going to give the edge to Annie. She got 2nd place at North American Champs last year when it was at Tahoe. 4th place, I'm going Chris, and then Jamie Bruce rounding out the top 5.
Awesome. Men's side, before we get there, though, you did mention the weather a little bit. So it's been warm, but tomorrow we're looking at 40 degrees. Does that benefit anybody on either side?
Honestly, I think that most people, it's not going to be too big of a factor. If it was snowing or constant downpour, that might affect things a little bit, but honestly, I think you dress appropriately, you're going to feel 20 degrees warmer when you're moving anyway.
Awesome.
Not a big a deal.
So on the men's side, obviously we're in Canada, home of Ryan Atkins, our world champion.
Yes, and defending North American regional champ.
Does anyone beat him tomorrow?
In my opinion, I think Hawk Hall's got it. He is as confident as ever. He just ran away from the start in Utah, first ever North American Elite Series win, and he just crushed it. But I think that the Canadian pride, you saw what happened in Mexico. The Mexican athletes really took a lot of pride being on their home soil. We talked about a couple really talented Canadian females. I think you're going to see some on the men's side, like Sean Stevens, Whale, Mick Girello, Ryan Atkins, obviously. Just move to the front and really challenge for the win or top 5 spots. It's going to be a crazy race.
Yeah, Sean's been out here, right, training. So he's used to this terrain. He's prepared for it. He kind of knows what's going on back there.
Yep, definitely. And like we said, a lot of undulating terrain. That's going to favor someone like Mick Girello, Rylan Chaddick, great downhill runner. And of course, whenever you're on a mountain, Josiah Middaugh. He just did a 4-day bike race. It was something like 60 miles a day, a ton of elevation gain. If his legs aren't destroyed from that earlier this week, he only had a day off since then he can be a factor as well.
In the running here, Josiah, that's where he
Yep.
is strong at.
Yep.
So obviously on the beast, the obstacles play a little bit less of a factor. The mountain plays a little bit more. So Josiah, I think, is one that may surprise us.
Yeah, I'm giving the edge to Hawk then Ryan Atkins. You?
It's hard again to go against Ryan. I mean, I think Hawk has got something to prove.
Yep.
But I still think Ryan being here is going to want to go 1-2 with Lindsay, or 1-1 with Lindsay, as he typically does.
I was going to say they've shared that top spot on the podium. No one should be surprised if they do in their home country, and we'll see what happens on the race course.
Excellent. Any other factors out there you think that we should know about?
I mean, it is at elevation. Several of these series races this year have been at elevation.
Yeah, we're starting at 6,000. I think the peak is about 9.
No. It peaks in like 76, 700. I mean, it's still high elevation. You're
I'm at
definitely
sea
above
level,
sea level.
so yeah.
A lot of athletes. But I think if you've raced the series so far this year, you're kind of accustomed to that for some of the Spartan races. And
excellent.
Yeah, it's going to be a great race, honestly.
All right, so any last words or thoughts about the course?
I mean, this venue is just so scenic. It would definitely be on my bucket list. If you missed out this year, try to make it to Kelowna next year. It's going to be amazing. And there's a reason we run the race. All these predictions mean nothing until the athletes actually finish. So
absolutely. All right, let's get to the course.
Happens.
Well, thank you, Jack and Gary B. And thank you all for tuning in, joining us today for the Spartan North American Championships from Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. The first ever broadcast of a North American Championship race outside the United States. I'm David Magida, joined, as usual, by my partners in crime, Kirk DeWint and Bracken Crocker of the Running Public podcast. And gentlemen, it's an exciting day, new country to launch the North American Championships.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, fellas. I hate to say it, guys. I already have a little bit of FOMO. Are you feeling that at all, or am I alone here?
I'm looking at these upcoming conditions and saying no FOMO for me.
It's a weird type of FOMO. We were saying this a little bit prior to coming on here on the camera, but these conditions feel like classic Spartan to us. The series has changed immensely in the last few years. Obstacles look a little bit different than they did back in the day, but Mother Nature doesn't look any different now than she did in 2014. I'm getting old school Spartan vibes off of this course. Look at this mist on the mountain. The flags are just whipping all over the place. This is the Breckenridge, the Killington, the Tahoe, Tri-State, Wintergreen. We've seen this before, and it shakes things up.
You know, it's funny you say that, right? We always talk about this classic Spartan weather, and it's beautiful all week long, 75 degrees and sunny, and then race day rolls around and it's 38 degrees and raining, and that's just how it always used to be. I don't know if we'll get the rain today. It doesn't look like rain, but the wind is whipping hard, and there's some sloggy stuff out there. So it's definitely going to affect the race.
Yeah, the big story was looking at the weather conditions. We had rain rolling in, right? And we thought maybe we're going to get some of those obstacle matter type conditions. And I just looked at the radar, fellas. Looks like this monster storm is about 30 miles north of the race venue. It could have been very different, but I think some of these athletes must have said a little prayer this morning. Dry conditions it is.
Now, all three of us have raced at high altitude in the mountains with wind whipping. And I think we all have had that experience where when you're up on the exposed face of a mountain and you hop off of an obstacle where you're kind of stationary doing maybe some grip work, let's say Olympus or Herc hoist, it's a little bit tougher just to keep your full head of steam going and get right back to the run. It really shouldn't matter, but when there's 30-mile-per-hour winds and it's just tearing your body heat off of you, it's not conducive to just feeling like this aggressive, nasty runner. But a few people are wired that way, and it like levels them up an entire notch while everyone else gets pulled down half a notch. So I'm very excited to see who's built for this type of mentality.
And let's take this a step further. Like, we know that there are some people whose bodies physically are designed to handle cold a little better. If you're a little bit more of those skinnier, leaner guys, you may not be prepared for these conditions as much, especially since you just came through a summer of training. Let's say you live out in a hot weather climate. This is not ideal for you. But if you are someone who lives in, say, Canada, you may be a little bit more prepared for the things to come.
Jason, can we get on?
We've got Jack Bauer here with a little update. Jack.
Yeah, guys, so it's actually drizzling right now.
Starting to rain.
It's coming down steadily for the last maybe 2 minutes, but it is picking up. So this could be an interesting start in 10 minutes here.
Yeah. That's it.
Listen, if you have a drought, bring Spartan in. You're going to get rain. If you're having a heat wave,
we have the best,
bring them
best
in.
job here.
It's going to cool things down a little bit. Spartan is
All
the
right,
Murphy's
I'm gonna
Law
hide
of
under here for
weather.
a minute. Yeah.
Well, just putting my foot in my mouth, saying we had dry conditions, and I'm all smart seeing the radar north of the venue. I guess I was wrong. So how do you see this playing out? Because I feel like we have some still obstacle rookies in the field with great running legs, and then we have the tenured athletes. Like, a mist is as good as a downpour, fellas. In fact, sometimes that's worse on some of these obstacles. That slick, light rain. What do you fellas think? How are we going to see this shake things up? What do you think, David?
Well, you'll definitely see some more mistakes as it pertains to obstacles, and guys, at least at a minimum, having to be much more cautious, because that light, dewy mist that sits on things like the monkey bars and Twister, that leads to just little slips, little mistakes. But I think the bigger thing is that we just came off a huge mountain race in Utah where it was dry and it was 90 degrees. And now you have a mountain race and it is damp and it is 38 degrees Fahrenheit, not Celsius. But I just think from a condition standpoint, it just could not be more dramatically different while the courses remain relatively similar, both with two large climbs, both front loading, the biggest climb really right there out of the gates, and both with a lot of descending.
Yeah, and you know what? This timing of the rain is just the worst for these athletes. We're sitting here 10 minutes out from the start, and we've all raced in conditions like this. You can have wet, soaking wet conditions, and it does not change your game plan much, other than I'm going to grip tighter, and I might spend time on obstacles locked off at 90 degrees with my arms rather than swinging. Or you can race in really cold conditions. That's fine too. But the moment it starts to rain and it's cold, that changes things. Suddenly gear becomes an issue. Do I wear a jacket? Do I not? Do I put on blag mitts over my hands? Do I not? People are now 10 minutes, 8 minutes from the start, and you might see people scrambling, sprinting back to their car, running back to the gear tent and trying to figure out, do I need to make a game time change? And that does not go well for a lot of athletes. They don't want to be knocked out of their rhythm right as they're about to do the biggest race of their year.
Well, and then let's not even neglect the concept of footwear, Bracken. You are a resident footwear expert, but there are a lot of shoes that are excellent for climbing and descending in dry conditions, but the minute you throw just a little bit of dampness in, some of them become useless. I think of the Nike Terrakiger as a perfect example of that. Mm-hmm. A shoe that the minute you touch anything wet, it becomes like ice.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, thinking from my perspective, is I live in Minnesota, right? I'm in the northern United States, and it's still 85, 90 degrees here every single day. And I think a lot of these athletes have been doing what we call summer running, right? They're running when it's warm. Even in the morning, it's 60, 70, 80 degrees where these athletes are training. And I know we pay a lot of credence to the heat affecting performance, but if you're anything like me, cold affects my performance if I have not acclimated to that as well. And then you add a little bit of rain on top of it. And if you're a freeze baby, and a lot of these athletes are because they're lean and mean, I actually see it playing out potentially. I really actually see this affecting potential outcome of how some of these bodies perform until they really work their engine up. Have you guys experienced that at all? Like cold affecting you negatively, being able to perform? Bracken, have you?
I'm a cold bunny here. I like it. I race well in it. But the moment your hands get wet in the cold, it changes things. You might be a great cold weather runner, but when your hands are getting wet and it's 38 degrees out and now you have to touch metal monkey bars, that changes life for some people. And it's just not a pleasant change for the vast majority. Not everyone's Ryan Atkins who can just have their hands exposed for 24 hours in an ultra and swing through obstacles with no issues. Not everyone's Aaron Newell.
Now, Bracken, I will say, I'd say all three of us have run and raced in conditions where it's literally sub-zero temperatures. And if you're geared up correctly, it's totally manageable. However, the coldest races that I have ever experienced are the ones where it's in the 30s, it's raining. I think back to that North Carolina Whitewater Center race that you and I ran all those years ago, where we're running with our fingers tucked into our armpits for large chunks of the race because we're trying to maintain that dexterity in order to continue to be able to use our hands in the times that mattered. And in that race, for example, we watched all 20 top men fail the traverse wall because nobody could grip with the mud and the cold conditions. This won't be that today, but I do think that it is going to just add that extra element that we're looking for. Now, with all this said, does this shake up your predictions at all for the top men and the top women in the field? I think we have the opportunity right now to talk about this.
We talked about it on our preview show that if there's weather, it helps the Atkins clan a whole lot. We know how good Hawk is. We know how good Emma is, but they haven't passed a few of the tests that need to be passed in OCR in order to be considered bulletproof. We haven't seen them in really cold. We haven't seen them in very wet. We haven't seen them in cold and wet.
10 minutes later,
technical terrain running, we haven't seen a ton of it out of them. And so our known commodities, Lindsay, Ryan, they're going to be just fine today. Now, this is exciting for me because we get to see people pass some of those tests you have to pass along the way.
Yeah, and I think if you're a viewer and a fan of this sport, you want to see some shakeups happen, right? You want to kind of see some failures in a weird way. You want to see the dynamic of the race change. And I think when you have cold and you have wet, I think you have yourself a stew, fellas, for maybe some exciting lead changes and mixes up in the field. Sounds like we got Jack Bauer ready to chime in here.
We do have Jack.
And can you just make
race. So you saw that dry that I might have been running down. You're gonna start going over a creek, and then you just go right into this dense forest. This is so technical. I'll give you like a quick 30-second preview and stuff, but logs everywhere, just stumps. You got these mini Christmas trees everywhere. My feet are already soaked. So early on, there's no good line right here. It looks like the Ultra Beasters packed down the course a little bit versus what I saw yesterday, but this is going to be some rough footing for everybody early on. Back to you.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, when I look at this, fellas, and Kirk, I'm going to send this to you, man. I look at how it seems that there are these small, narrow lines to take, but you're going to have a cluster of 30 guys competing for those, and then other people are either going to have to slow down or be relegated to bushwhacking right out of the gates.
Yeah, you know what I see is I think I live here in the Midwest and I see like foliage. I see green. I see remnants of West Virginia-esque sort of landscape. And a lot of times we see these mountain races be real rocky and exposed and the traditional mountain race. And here I'm looking, I'm thinking, we got a good mix for kind of everybody across the U.S. Some terrain people might be familiar with if you don't live in the mountains.
Ryan Lindsay here? Ryan and Lindsay?
So I like what I'm seeing there. A little different than a normal mountain race. What do you think, Bracken?
Yeah, this is giving me Montana flashbacks. This is the kind of terrain we talk about ankle biters, things that just snatch your shoelaces or snatch your ankles when you can't see them coming. This is that. Like part of being a technical terrain runner is knowing somehow your feet kind of just have this like echolocation. They can get in and out of the things you can't see, and some people have a knack for it, and other people do not. But what happens here is this is like merging onto a freeway. If someone breaks up front, you get that ripple effect behind you. And so free and clear running is going to just magnify itself in gaps early in this race, because if you're sitting 3-4 spots behind someone, every time they brake check you, you lose your rhythm, and they know they're about to chop their feet and they can come in and out of it smooth. You get caught by surprise every single time, and then you've got to restart your engine, and it saps you. The train saps you, the stop and start saps you, and then watching the leaders move away from you mentally saps you. It's early. This could actually play into the race.
I mean, absolutely. When you think about how somebody who maybe should be running for like a 10th or 12th position puts themselves in, say, 5th and causes a traffic jam to separate lead pack from chase pack. We see this all the time. When it gets to a little bit of single track, you can get dropped from the lead group because you're just not connected. Pause here.
Oh, my native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Katamra se porte le peya, il se porte la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
That's pretty cool to hear something other than the same national anthem, isn't it? That makes you feel like, yeah, you're somewhere else. And this is exciting, fellas. I was thinking about, the beginning of this race as far as how it's going to play out. And I want to kind of pass to you guys on this. Now, Jack alluded towards the fact that we see some really bushwhacky stuff early, right? And so guys are going to be fighting for early positions to sort of get ahead, not get bottlenecked and all of that. But there's one thing you don't want to do in a big, long mountain race at altitude, and that is go out too hard. But yet I feel like people are going to be fighting for front positions early. What do you fellas think? You think that's going to really play out today, or do you think that these are all grizzled veterans who are going to execute perfectly flawless races? Bracken, what do you say?
Well, I told them they got 10 minutes.
Well, we say this every single time we have a championship race, which is that the nature of the race, people chew up and spit each other out. Everyone can't PR on the same day. You can't all nail a race, and the more studs you get into one corral, the higher the chance is that more of them are going to have a tough day. Adrenaline's higher, race tactics are tougher, the competition level is higher. So no, I think we're going to see some big blow-ups, but we're going to see some people punch above their weight as well.
You see these gentlemen dancing around at the start line? Does that tell you it's chilly or not? You see jackets over the head. You see people dancing like there's, they got to pee. That's because they're staying warm, folks. They're look at them shaking the hands out like that, rubbing them together. That tells you it's brisk.
You know who isn't doing that is that man right there, Ryan Atkins, who looks very comfortable. He went sleeveless today while the others are standing there. You see Mark Batris in a zip-up with a hood. Very comfortable look out of Ryan Atkins. He's right at home here. This is not super far off from his old training territories.
And if you see, like, you look, sorry, you're looking at the field and you're not seeing like hundreds of guys in there. And I just want to confirm for the viewer that the model Spartan has gone to in the last couple of years is a very gated entry into some of these championship races. So in the past, you'd see fields of 90 full all the way to the back. And now we're seeing the cream of the crop, the best of the best. This field looks thin because it's only the people who qualify and deserve to be here. So if you're wondering about the density, a lot of those are on an age group today, and this is the best of the best.
Mm-hmm. Now we saw Hawk Call. We looked like VJ Jones in there. Let's
Did you see VJ?
Names right now, boys.
No VJ.
Was that not VJ that I saw?
I don't believe VJ's racing.
Oh man, this gentleman who looked just like him.
He's going all in on trying to win an OCR championship later in the year, but looking at this terrain, this is a course that would suit him for that beast distance.
It would. He doesn't love the beast races, but he's been improving there so much, and the racers are often. It looks like Ryland Shadeg right there off to the left. I wouldn't be surprised to see Sean Stephen Wales have a great performance today. He really does love climbing, and he's from out in this area as well.
When is the last time we saw 13, 15 seconds into a race, every racer with their arms out to the side pinwheeling in order to keep traction on the terrain? This is a fantastic choice of a start terrain.
Intentions are being made already, though. And you see some of our major players. I don't even know if I saw a white tank top of Atkins quite yet. As you see Woodsy there, like some people are biding their time. It's easy. Those race jitters can come out real quickly going downhill. But once gravity starts working against you, I think we're going to see them just kind of bunch right back up.
And look, we're already in that deep grass, that tall stuff, and the stumbling that is happening, and the single filing that's occurring immediately. And we talked about it. Look how spread out this has gotten over the course of maybe a quarter mile.
Mm-hmm. Kirk, you asked earlier, do people need to over rev early in order to not get disconnected? What this reminds me of a bit, and I referenced this race earlier, but we had a championship series race at Breckenridge a while back, several years ago, with all the big names. And there was a lot of this early on, and we went across a lake early on that was waist high, and the race started after that. A lot of people got out hard, but a bunch just waited and said, listen, we're going to have a huge exposed 30-minute climb to the top. We'll get moving there. And the strongest climbers know that you really can't do anything to me in the first 5-10 minutes here that I can't undo in the next 20 minutes after that. So the KG veterans, I don't think will feel pressure to get out. It's the young guns who are going to feel like I'm going to capitalize right here. And they're the ones that have the ability to blow this race up.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I'm looking forward to seeing is, a couple of things play out would be, for example, as you see Hawk already in the lead, is seeing Atkins only began running a week ago after doing a big bike block. Atkins has been running for just over 7 days without much running before that. Then you have a KG vet, as you said, Ryan Woods, who's right there, who hasn't done a whole lot this year, but this is a course that might suit a guy like that. And then you have the comparative of the young guns who are up front with those guys like Hawk Call, Ryland Shadig. And it's going to be cool to see how it plays out. But obviously intentions are being set already. Look at this pack breaking away of all the players we thought that would be there. I think that's fun to see. What do you see?
6 or 7 guys, right? I mean, right out of the gates. And the reason you didn't see Ryan Atkins' tank is it looks like he may have taken it off right before, but it was hard to tell as he went by. Certainly, these men are going to look to assert themselves and just separate from the group. And nobody's trying to slug it out 13 miles from the finish line. You want to settle in. You want to be comfortable. And then when the opportunity presents itself for an attack later in this race, certainly it'll be there. I presume on the first descent and second climb is when you're going to see guys start to actually try and hit each other hard.
Tell you what, one person did not get that memo, and it's Hawk Call. Hawk Call is going to come out throwing haymakers with every single kilometer of this race. We talked to him after Utah, and we said, we know you were aggressive last year. What was your plan coming in? He said, my plan was to be even more aggressive. And I don't think he's going to change. Like, he's going to ride with the horse that got him here. He's going to keep that going. He knows what people can do on this type of terrain, and he also knows that you can get out of sight here. And I assume he's going to try to crack people from the start. He's already leading.
He reminds me of one of my favorites of all time in his own right. Steve Prefontaine. Which is obviously he was a track athlete, but Steve Prefontaine front ran. Steve Prefontaine called his shots and had that like smug confidence that Hawk has. And I just like seeing that parallel. He states his intentions, and then what Hawk does is he goes out and does exactly what he says he's going to do. And I respect that. I could use a little more of that in my own life, fellas. I think we're in for a treat.
Well, and with this style of racing, it's a high-risk, high-reward style of racing, which is when it works, does it work? Because you get away from the field and you can really crank on it. But when it backfires, it blows up in your face, and then you end up finishing 11th instead of finishing in the top 4. So, we look at that, and what does Hawk Call need to do this year from a points perspective? This race is irrelevant, but this is a championship race, and I guess he's decided, I'll go for broke today. What's the point of finishing 4th? You're here to win or try to win.
Yeah, that Call family in general doesn't race for second place. That doesn't really enter their mind. And I love, Kirk, you had just said something about the young guys, and we saw Hawk leading, Rylan Schodig in second. We had Nick Mask in fourth, I believe, and Atkins and Woods were the only two up there. This is fantastic, and the women are off.
Now you got the women's start right here, and look who's out in the front, fresh off of her seventh place female finish at Leadville 100 miler, Chris Rogloski. I think it's stunning that she's coming out this hot, but usually your legs are pretty dead after an effort like that. Right behind her, Emma Cook Clark. You'll see Lindsay Webster in the mix. We're going to have some fun today in the women's field.
Yeah, and I mentioned what I was looking forward to in the men's side, seeing how maybe conditions played out, and then the KG veterans versus the young guns as the kind of the storyline plays out. And on the women's side, I was looking forward to seeing three very distinct things. One, will Chris Rogloski come back from her 100-miler in Leadville 6 days ago, which is absolute insanity. Clearly her legs have come back. At least she thinks they have at this point. And then watching the Lindsay and Emma battle ensue, because I think we got Clash of the Titans. And then I'm really looking forward to see if Jamie Brusa can follow up glimmers of greatness that she showed in Utah and wasn't able to kind of see through the finish line. Those are the three storylines I'm looking forward to following on the women's side. What about you, Bracken? Anything else jump out at you?
Well, I don't want to discredit anyone else in the field, but we have been waiting for Lindsay versus Emma on neutral territory all year. We didn't get into Mexico. I want it now, and we're getting it now. We have Hawk and Ryan, that storyline on the male side, and on the female side, we have Emma and Lindsay, and I just am on the edge of my seat to see what happens between these two. Can Emma descend with Lindsay? Can Lindsay match Emma on Emma's strengths? This is exactly what I want as a fan of the sport.
Now, I will say, in Big Bear, what we saw was Lindsay looked to be cracking right at the end in the festival area, and Emma looked to be taking it away, and then she missed the spear. That being said, Lindsay had just returned from an international competition sky running race that she had performed very well in. She was recently off a flight, and going into this race, she had mentioned that she was extremely sluggish and extremely tired. Today, she seems fresher. She's been out here in these mountains, and she seems revved up and ready to go.
No, I'm waiting for the one.
Now we got Jack Bauer with an update. Jack, take it away.
Yeah. Hey, so I've been listening to you guys talk in the background. You are not lying that Hawk is pushing the pace. He went out just like a lightning rod right at the beginning. Rylan went with them, and then it was pretty much a lot of the Canadians. They looked the most comfortable on the start line temperature-wise. A lot less breeze here in the woods, but you saw how technical this running is, and you quickly saw people string out because they just couldn't keep up with the people in front of them. If the first 6 minutes of this race is any indication, Hawk's technical running, as you alluded to, he hasn't proven it necessarily at major Spartan races yet. It's all there. He's got nothing to worry about. But you saw Ryan Woods in the next pack. VJ's not here. Nick Mask is not here. You mentioned them. But a lot of the Canadian contingent, Mick Girello, Sean Stevens-Whale, they're up front. But I'm going to go back and get the women, so you'll see them shortly.
We have a Nick Mask doppelganger. Did you see at the start line? Blonde hair swept over the side. Who is that?
Someone who qualified.
Fooled us. You were touching on Lindsay earlier, David, and this is what when we would discuss either on air or off air about the Lindsay and Emma battle, we would say, well, Emma's got the feather in her cap of being a better runner. That's what we said, and if Emma can run away with it, she can run away with it. And then we see Lindsay Webster go out and run these big mountain races and prove to us that Lindsay Webster can race when obstacles aren't involved. And I would say that's a feather in Lindsay's cap, proving like, hey, we wondered if Lindsay could run with Emma. Well, I think maybe she can, and I think her running's probably as best as it has been. So it just leads to like really good headbutting between those two ladies.
I think it's safe to say that Lindsay's climbing has improved over the course of this season as she's focused more on her sky running.
This is the interesting part about this sport. Early in the sport, we used to hear people say, what, are you just going to keep adding new things to running until you find something you're good at? And it was probably a valid criticism. But as a result of that, of all these like athletes coming in with different skill sets, they're also really good at other things. And we saw Josiah just finished a multi-day mountain bike race. Ryan Atkins 2 weeks ago did a Leadville 100-mile mountain bike race. Chris Rogloski just did the Leadville 100 foot race and took 7th. Lindsay is coming off of back-to-back sky running wins. Jamie Brusa, I believe Jamie just took 7th at a Cirque Series race. We have these athletes branching out and doing many different things, and now they're coming back to this North American Championship with a set of skills that is rounded out. And it's very, very exciting to see how that plays out on a long, nasty course like this, because everyone's engine has been built up this year.
And I think that's what makes certain performances either more or less impressive once this all plays out is a lot of these athletes are so passionate about moving their bodies and competing in sport that they never show up fresh until like the biggest of big dances, which might be the World Championships. I mean, this is the North American Championships. There's a lot of money and prestige on the line, and you have some of the favorites going out and still doing like multi-hour events within an hour or within a week of this event. And it's just like, I don't know, it's such a cool niche of like type A personalities who are just going to go grab life by the horns and go compete. And we'll see. I'll be very curious to see how the recovery strategies of like those 4 people you mentioned, Bracken, who have all done really big things here in the last 7 to 10 days is going to play out. But I think we'll find out here shortly.
Well, so I coach an athlete who regularly does 100-mile races. And the one thing that she says, and this is a person who just seems kind of unbreakable, just always going. And the one thing she says is the first, not just week, but like 10 days after a 100-mile effort, the legs just aren't there. They're just heavy and sluggish and slow. So if Chris Rogloski is able to just keep on driving like this, it is super impressive. As you see your lead women right now, and it looks like you've got Emma Cook-Clark, Lindsay Webster,
Annie Doobie.
and Annie Doobie sitting in third.
Was
Annie
that
Doobie,
Emma in
welcome
first?
back.
I thought Emma had more of a salmon-colored top on. Am I totally off base here?
I think so.
Okay. I'll accept that. I thought we had a surprise at the front.
If there's one thing I'm certain of, it's that Emma Cook-Clark is going to want to be near the front, and Lindsay Webster is going to want to go with her wherever she goes today.
Yeah, and what you guys are seeing here.
I love that Annie's
ahead,
inserting herself into the race. She was a question mark.
Well, we
coming
had questioned her fitness because she had been kind of in and out of injury, and here she is like, screw it, you know what? Shoot for the stars, maybe land on the moon, but heck, maybe land on the stars. She's proven she's capable of running with both of these women. In fact, Annie finished within 1 minute of Emma Cook-Clark last year at the Spartan North American Championships in Tahoe. And if she's that version of herself today, then she should be right where she is at right now in this race. She's right where she should be if she's at peak fitness. And maybe, just maybe, she actually is at peak fitness, fellas.
Well,
Now, I do apologize if we do have some occasional broadcast issues. Not only are we doing this live, but we are doing this from the mountains, and sometimes signal can get disrupted. But I think so far, this is looking pretty good.
Since she came into the season with a significant shoulder injury, and she's proven that she can obstacle now on that shoulder. And now she has a significant ankle injury. And this is test number 1. She has to get through this first technical situation, because if you have a bad ankle, you know that brush on the ground is really disconcerting. If she gets through this engaged in the race, that's a big jolt to her system saying, all right, I'm excited. I did it. Now let's go climb a little bit. We know she can climb. The next check mark is going to be, can she run downhill on that ankle?
And the thing about ankles are funny in that once you get that one big roll, that one big inversion, for example, where you feel significant pain and you're out of commission for a little while, two things happen. One, you can re-roll it pretty much at any time, and that re-roll is as painful as the original and can set you back all the way as if you haven't been recovering at all. The other thing is that you just don't have the confidence to not just run terrain, but attack terrain. It's a very different thing. And if you're going to compete for a win in a race like this, on a venue like this, with competition like this, it requires the confidence to attack with every step.
And she looks confident, doesn't she? She looks very sure-footed. I see firm foot planning, confident movement. She's not tiptoeing around anything. And what you're seeing these ladies run is sort of that douche grade we talk about. They're probably running like 5-10% grade. It's that percent grade that I hate the most because you're required to still run fast, but it's uphill. And it's like the perfect combination of engine meets burning legs. And so the beginning of this race has this nice gradual incline that these ladies are running up. And you can't really tell it on camera, but they are going uphill. And that's that sneaky thing that you look down at your heart rate monitor or your heart rate and you're like, oh, shoot, how did it get there already? And so it's very important that these ladies don't tip over early because it can very easily do that on this sort of gradual climbing terrain. You know, one trip over a log or one extra hop over a creek and your heart rate bumps up 5 beats a minute. You just got to keep an eye on it early in a race, in my opinion. Do you ever notice that, Bracken, with like that douche grade type running? It's just like something about it's a little more taxing than even steeper grades.
Yeah, and early on, you don't quite feel it, like you said, and your heart rate sneaks up. And you were talking about her foot plant. I've been trying to determine here which ankle is bad. It's a little game I like to play when you know someone's hurt. Watch them run and see if you can identify what they're favoring. Usually, let's say your right ankle's bad. If you get to a log or a rock, you're going to step up with that ankle onto it so that you can jump down onto your strong one. And she's used both feet several times to do this. She's hurdled over things. She stepped on things. She's been landing right, landing left, pushing off with both. I can't figure out which foot is bothering her, which means at least as of right now, she doesn't have such a mental hang up that she's actually chopping her steps in order to favor one side.
I'm going to break you guys just for a moment for a quick advertisement. Have you run a Spartan yet this year? There are still over 30 2022 events in North America, from LA to Florida and from Canada to Mexico. Sign up at Spartan.com. That's Spartan.com. And let's stick with this subject, Bracken, that we were talking about before, and running injured, because you know, one of the things that I think has impressed me the most about the two women just in front of Annie Doobie is Lindsay Webster and Emma Cook-Clark have remained relatively healthy. And you see this from a lot of athletes, but the two up in front, in general, it is so hard. It's such a demanding sport in terms of the amount of damage that your body can sustain in any one given race, even any one given descent. You look at some of the greats in this sport, and their bodies are so prepared to take this beating. It's truly impressive. So what differentiates an athlete like that from, say, those who are perennially or perpetually injured?
Well, that's internal to start with. Some of the greatest, most of the greatest in any sport are the ones that are always there. The greatest availability, or the greatest ability that you can have sometimes, is availability. And you look at from LeBron James to Michael Jordan, Michael Phelps, it doesn't matter what sport you're looking at, Lionel Messi, they're always there. You just don't hear about them missing an entire season because they don't. And so part of that is just luck of the draw. And the other part is that they take their craft seriously. Lindsay is always showing the core work she's doing, the mobility work she's doing. Emma, you can just take a look at her and tell that she takes her gym work seriously. These people aren't leaving kind of like gaps in the chain. Their core, their hips, their ankles, they don't have areas they neglect. And as a result, they don't have areas break down on them as much.
Let's
now
talk
we've
about
got
what we're seeing here
real
quick. Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, we predict Emma Cook-Clark's going to go out like a shot, right? And nobody can hang with Emma Cook-Clark running. And then I alluded to the fact that Lindsay Webster's been performing pretty well in these mountain races, right? And here you have these three all together, which says, well, in the past, we've seen Emma run away early. In Utah, our last series race, at this point, we're 13 minutes into the elite women's race. Emma already had over a minute lead on second place, maybe more. And here we got two ladies saying, all right, we're going to play today. We're going to play a little bit today. And so I don't know if the ladies like Lindsay and Annie have stepped up their game and are saying, we're going with Emma no matter what, or if Emma's holding back or there's something we don't know is going on. But I honestly wouldn't have predicted that there would have been three ladies together at 15 minutes into this race already. I would have guessed that somebody would have created a gap, and they haven't. So what do you guys think is going on there, David? Like, how do you get into the minds of like Lindsay and Annie in this situation, knowing Emma's sort of the favorite front runner?
I think when you look at what Lindsay's thinking, it's that, I've been here 1,000 times. I'm running my race. I'm waiting for my moment. You look at Emma, and I think you say, she is the defending North American champion, and she wants that opportunity to upset Lindsay Webster, and maybe front running against Lindsay Webster isn't as smart as just grinding her down slowly but surely. But when I see Annie Doobie here, my thought is she's saying to herself, by staying connected to these two women, I'm doing two things. I'm leaving the door open to maybe somehow win this race, but more importantly, I am putting myself in a position where I can lock up a podium spot early in this race if I can get as large a gap between myself and everyone else and let these women help pace me, push me, drag me through this portion of the race and give myself a little bit of extra cushion.
I was starting to worry for Annie. Towards the end of that bushwhacky section, the green section, a gap was forming. And the next thing we see, she comes out of that into the into the obstacle area, and she surged right past Lindsay with purpose in order to get to the obstacle and get off of it. And that is the mindset of someone who is looking for ways to stay in the race rather than looking for reasons why it might not be my day. That is exactly how you have to beat a Lindsay or an Emma is. Every chance I get, I'm stealing time back and I'm putting them on the defensive.
And there has been this distinct hierarchy in the sport. Whether you look at the men's side or you look at the women's side, there has typically been a few people who sit at a level that most of the athletes would agree is a tier higher. And Annie Doobie is that first person in that next tier down and has been for the last year. She wants to insert herself into that peak, that top tier of athlete. And I think the only way that she could do that is by coming out and, throwing some haymakers with the big ones.
Yeah, she certainly is. And two things I want to touch on here real quick that I'm noticing. One, we saw the ladies traverse a metal obstacle just now. Nobody fell off. So we were starting to speculate about cold hands, slippery metal, things like that. Now, granted, these women are fairly obstacle proficient, but we saw no issues at all. Two, we saw Annie Doobie take her jacket off already 10 minutes into the race. Yes, you're building a lot of body heat while you're climbing, but I think that just tells us that maybe it's feeling a little warmer to these athletes. Maybe the humidity's up or maybe the conditions are a little warmer than we predicted. You can see some sun shining down on them at times. So maybe we are speculating for nothing with the wet conditions and the cold conditions, because if you're taking your jacket off 10 minutes into a race, you're certainly not cold. So I don't know if these conditions are going to be a factor or not, but it looks like maybe those two big things that could potentially cause athletes trouble aren't at the moment. And I just thought that was something interesting to note.
I may take that a step further from you, Kirk, because I look at in the Tour de France, you see guys, they have to zip up when they hit the descents, but they have to open those vests back up for the climbing because you just get so warm, so hot, but then the descending can be so cold. Maybe at the top of this mountain, we may see some athletes get a little chilly, but I think that the cold temperatures are actually going to work to their advantage because it's just going to be better for temperature regulation and avoiding the overheating and the heat exhaustion that we saw in Utah. And we might just get the best out of each of these athletes today as a result.
We've seen all these women now start to heat up. And like you said, they're going to get cold on the next descent. But one thing that I don't think we've talked about this year, because we haven't had a cold mountain race, is what happens to your eyes when you start bombing downhill, especially in the morning in the cold. They get really teary. And some athletes deal with this and struggle with it more than others. But your eyes well up, and it's almost like there's like a light mist on a windshield. It's just hard to keep it clear. And it's one thing to bomb down fire roads like that, but I believe we're about to see some technical descending. And when you have cold technical descents, it is just really hard to see your line down the mountain. And that's something to bear in mind here. Is we talked about some athletes we haven't seen do this before. Are there athletes in this field that actually haven't experienced this yet?
And we apologize ahead of time for any disruptions to our visuals. Again, we're out in the mountains, and this stuff can happen. And so if we lose a shot, we'll do our best to get it back as soon as possible. But you may get some coverage of the Ultra Beast that is going on right now on this course as well. The Ultra athletes left earlier in the morning and are a little bit further up ahead on the course right here at the spear throw, of course.
Yeah, and as you're seeing here too, we have an earlier spear throw today than normal. In these big mountain races, they've historically, the spear throw's been towards the end. I like an early spear throw because it allows shakeups to happen. And as somebody who likes to watch good TV, I want to see some shakeups happen. And then two, as you're watching this Ultra Beaster, as he went through Z-wall, spear throw, and now A-frame, it's misty up there. It's dark. It might even have like a dense fog, which could be sitting on some of those obstacles and those metal obstacles. And that's where you have like those different transitions. I remember in like Tahoe World Champs years ago, bright and sunny down in the festival area, and you get up top and you might as well have been on Mars. 30-mile-an-hour winds,
Yes.
no sun, blustery conditions. So right here is proof that maybe on top of this mountain here, we're going to see like a completely different course condition. So I'll be curious to see once we get the elites through some of these, if that changes anything at all or not.
Oh, absolutely. And Kirk, to your point, the conditions at the bottom of the mountain, the conditions halfway up the mountain can vary so dramatically from the top of the mountain. It often can feel like a different planet. And look how dark and misty it's gotten up here. Not even mentioning that they're going to get wet here and then descend. So we were talking about how their body temperatures could drop on the descent because they're not working with the same level of effort as the climb. We're going to get them wet first and then send them down the descent. We are looking at potentially... what that can lead to often is like a little bit of cramping when that cold water hits and you've done this big anaerobic effort to get to the top of the mountain. So there is the possibility that there could be a little bit of mayhem thrown into the middle of this thing.
The last shot we got of the females before the cameras crapped out on us was Emma was just leaving the other two in her dust. She was absolutely attacking the climb. And so at some point in this race, the rest of the women are going to have to make a choice. Do we over rev and try to stay with her, or are we just going to stick with the plan of try to take it back on the downhills?
So I'm going to go back to cycling again. I love the comparisons. And I think that one good comparison between Lindsay Webster and Emma Cook-Clark is if you ever watched the fun battles between like Lance Armstrong and Jan Ullrich, and Armstrong had these abilities to throw these quick accelerations as he attacked climbs. He would ascend, he would accelerate, and he would try and drop everyone else. And Ullrich, he rode in this very high gear, and he wouldn't pedal as fast, but he was powerful, and he would slowly but surely whittle back that gap again. He couldn't accelerate it the same way. When I look at Emma Cook-Clark, I see someone who is able to change gears on a climb and throw a surge. And when I see Lindsay, it's just this, she just taps out a rhythm. She just keeps cranking out that rhythm. And then Clark pulls away a little. Lindsay slowly pulls her back over the course of a climb. And I think you're going to see this little cat and mouse game going back and forth throughout the day.
And just as an
They showed a
FYI to our viewers at home, anyone you see in a purple vest is running the Ultra. So don't get confused here. If you see someone come flying through and we're not talking about them, they are running the Ultra. This would be a fantastic and brutal course to run an Ultra, which is 2 laps of the course that the championship race is doing, plus a little add-on at the beginning. So that is what you're seeing on screen. That purple vest is for the Ultra athletes.
Yeah, you think doing the beast is tough, which it is. Do the beast twice and then add an extra 4-mile loop to that. And that's what the people you are watching are doing right now. They are in for a 7+ hour day at minimum. So these are the real heroes that you'll maybe get glimpses of out on course. I was going to touch on something you said, David, about Lindsay and Emma and their running styles. I don't know if you guys caught this, but I don't think you could have 2 different running strides or biomechanics next to each other. As you watch them go uphill, Lindsay was probably, let's say, at a cadence of 180 strides per minute, and Emma was at like 160 or 150. Emma taking these long, powerful, grindy strides going uphill, and Lindsay using, what does she call them, her power stumps, to just churn over, quick. And Emma's taking these big what seem boundy strides, and that's what makes Emma great, is she can open it up and really push. But that is a costly stride. And so it just couldn't be more varying techniques, and you're very right with those parallels between Jan Ullrich and Lance Armstrong. Well done there, David.
Thanks, buddy. The one thing I will say is you could also reverse those parallels, because Armstrong rode in this low gear and he could just super high cadence that he developed post cancer treatment when he didn't have the power anymore. And so in some ways you could switch that and say Emma Cook Clark has that higher gear, but she just has this ability to accelerate up climbs that is really truly, it's phenomenal. I don't know that there is another woman in the field that has the ability to do that way. And Lindsay just tends to be that steady climber. She doesn't worry about, did I lose 15 meters? She just knows, okay, I'll find a way to get it back. And they both are such good descenders.
They really are. Now, we had a narrative going with Rylan Shadig coming into Utah. It was his coming out party a year ago. He had 3/4 of a fantastic race in Utah, and then his body really rebelled. He was having trouble with keeping things down. He cracked. This is a very similar course to Utah, very similar elevation. And if he was one of the favorites prior, we'd be remiss not to talk about him now. Plus, now he has the extra motivation of, even though we wouldn't consider it embarrassing what happened, because we've been there, we know that just occurs as an endurance racer. He has to have a level of, I let myself down. I was on my home turf. I was supposed to do well and I cracked. Coming in with that type of headspace, Kirk, what do you think? What do you expect out of Rylan on a day like today?
Oh gosh, I expect really big things out of him, barring any tactical errors or obstacle mishaps. So coming into Utah, and even previously before that, I believe Mexico, he was sort of dealing with some injuries and not able to run as much as he wanted. And sort of, let's like show up and see what my body gives me sort of thing. And then in Utah, he ends up basically choking on his own blood. He had something going on in his throat. So he was swallowing a little bit of blood as he was running and then throwing it up because it was aggravating his gut, which didn't allow him to even take in nutrition during the race. And he still had a really impressive performance, barring that he was having a rough go. We saw a clip of Rylan bend over and puke mid-race and just keep plowing again. And so Rylan and I were messaging a little bit yesterday, and I think he's quietly always confident. But there's something to him right now where I think he's going to stick his nose in there until he can no longer, or he pulls away. I don't think we're going to see him outside of the top 5 at any point until maybe later stages, and maybe not even the top 3. But I think he's in as good a position as any as he has ever been to have a big performance. So I like today for him.
I would agree with you, Kirk, and I would say that a lot of that for me has to do with the temperature change. When he has struggled, it has been when these temperatures have gotten into the 90s and he overheats. Typically, you see this on some of these guys who carry a little bit more muscle and a little more body weight, and he is on the larger side for a good, strong climber. And so he's got a little more muscle that cranks out a little more heat, and he needs to work on trying to regulate his body temperature. He'll struggle with that a bit more than some of the lighter guys. And so when you have a day that's 40 degrees or less, that's even more beneficial to a guy who maybe struggles with the heat a little bit. And I think his issues were more heat exhaustion than anything else at the last couple races that he has had that problem in Utah. And so you're looking at a perfect condition for a guy who might be able to steal this thing.
Those are super valid points. And if I'm putting myself in Rylan's headspace here, Rylan came on the scene about the time Hawk Call came on the scene. Not at the same time, but they had their breakout race together. And Rylan beat him. And Hawk has garnered most of the media narrative, and he's riding this tidal wave of he is the future. That's the narrative right now. If I'm Rylan, that's a big driving factor into that chip on my shoulder right now, because he did everything he was supposed to do, and he's been right there. But Hawk's getting a lot of the love, and rightly so. Hawk deserves all of it. But Rylan, if I'm him, I have to be feeling like, what do I need to do to get your attention and respect right now? Well, what you need to do, if you're him, in his mind, I'm going to go out and win, and then you can't deny me what I believe I deserve.
Yeah, it's a good point. And if you guys are wondering, watching here, why we're not seeing any athletes on camera, we got cameraman stationed out right about 5 to 6K into this race near a gauntlet of things, including the spear throw and some of the stuff we saw the Ultra Beasters going through. So what we're waiting on is for these athletes to get to this gauntlet at somewhere between 5 and 6K into this race. And remember, this is a long race, so we're still very early in this thing, and we're going to get some more coverage coming shortly. We're just waiting for these athletes to make it up to this first gauntlet here. of failable obstacles potentially. So just hang tight with us as these runners are working their best to get their butts in front of this camera, I assure you.
All valid points, and also a big thanks to our rabbits who are out there who are. We don't always have the world-class trail runners that are able to track with these guys the entire time, but they are running hard today to try and bring you as much coverage as they can. And it's a pretty tough job to chase some of the fastest trail runners on the planet for 23 kilometers through the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Credit where credit's due.
So as long as we have this obstacle gauntlet staring at us, I think we should discuss the spear throw for a second. Because A, it's nasty, it's windy, but B, this is the first time in a while we've seen it not be a penalty loop. As of the course map, unless they've gone and changed things for just the championship wave, it is back to being a burpee penalty. And that is a real game changer compared to being a penalty loop. A penalty loop, you can keep your momentum through. Oftentimes we see people miss, like going back to the San Luis Obispo race. People miss and accelerate it into the loop to get it done and get back to their race. You don't accelerate through burpees. You don't come out with momentum. You come out in worse shape than you went in. So I want to hear you two kind of break down what's about to happen here.
Kurt,
Well, you really don't want to be missing your spear at this point. I was ill prepared a few years back for a Tahoe race, and I missed my spear my first year at the World Championship on that first climb. And what it did to my body for the next 5 to 10 minutes was make me a shell of myself. Granted, I wasn't the athlete then that I am today, but if I didn't lose, and I'm going to be bold here and say minutes on that next mile of running, I would be shocked. And so burpees at this stage in the race, when you have to continue climbing afterwards, it's not just the minute and a half or 2 minutes it takes to do the burpees. When you run uphill afterwards, there's no reprieve, which means not only is it 2 minutes to do burpees, it's another minute or two lost on the remainder of that climb at least. That becomes a 4-minute penalty when you really break it down, unless you're really holding back by the time you get to the spear and you have extra matches to burn. So that's how I see it playing out. I don't know. What do you think, Bracken?
Yeah, I think it eradicates your matches. You might be saving matches, and 30 burpees says, hey, we don't care about your matchbook anymore. We're just going to throw a bunch of water on it and grind our heel into it. There are certain people on this planet who can do burpees, get up, and still do well. Ryan Woods has done it in the past. But they are few and far between. And if you're not practicing doing that, it's just terrible. And even if you are fit for it, it's a gut punch. You just stand up and think that there goes my race. Sure, I could run myself back into it, but no matter what I do now, at best, I finish 90 seconds behind where I should have. And it's really hard to stay mentally dialed in when you've had something like that. Like the penalty loop, you can approach it even mentally with momentum. Burpees remove all momentum from you.
It brings me back to some traumatic memories of doing your burpee 10K, fellas, where for about the first 5 kilometers of that thing, every half mile you did 20 burpees and things were going just fine. And then the second half, it felt like you're going backwards. You're in quicksand. You're just sinking. And when you've already put in such an effort running up an enormous mountain like they have today, add a race effort, and then you turn around and knock out 30 burpees knowing that your hopes of winning that race are already gone, mentally and physically, just crushing. It's a very hard thing to do, to know that all of a sudden you went from racing for a win to racing to hoping you get a top 5 or a top 10 position. Mentally, that's a huge change. But then also at the same time, when you look at physically the damage that it causes, the lactic acid buildup, the heart rate spike, that there's a plyometric effort to it too. So there is somewhat anaerobic effort for the legs as well. And then of course the rhythm breaking. 30 burpees is just a really atrocious thing to add to this.
Yeah, your first chance to recover is really once they reach the summit and they can start going downhill a little bit. You can regain your full run potential back if you want to allow yourself to coast for a brief amount of time. But as you see here, we're 40 minutes into this race and we haven't quite reached 6K yet, which tells me these athletes are running uphill right now because The pacing isn't going to look impressive because of all the vert and the terrain. And I want to speculate, guys, permission to speculate, okay? We should have the fellas coming in here shortly, I would imagine, right? What are we going to see shake out? Are we going to see Hawk way out front with his Prefontaine tendencies? Who are we going to see in the mix? Let's just see how good we are. What do you think, Bracken? Who do you think is going to come through 1 through 5? Make your shots. How well do you know this sport?
Well, I believe Hawk will still be leading. However, I think the technicality of the climb will keep the field a little closer together. Guys like Ryan Atkins and Ryan Woods are going to be able to keep in contact with him, and I don't think we've dropped Rylan at all. So I think you're going to see some version of Hawk leading, Atkins second, Woods and Rylan I think are going to be right around each other. And then I think you could have a kind of an extended pack of 7 come through. Segmented, not all in one group, but like a single file mule line of 7.
Who else we got? We got Josiah has to be in that mix as well. It's an interesting thought that I agree. I think it's early enough in the race that I don't think anybody's aggressive race strategy is going to backfire and blow up in their face right now. But I do think that there are not 7 men or 8 men in this race field who are going to be able to maintain this for over 2 hours. So at some point, the buck comes due. I just don't think it's going to be until somewhere in the middle of the second climb.
If you take a look at the big climbers, Sean Stevens-Whale can climb with any of these guys, probably for as long as he needs to, but certainly for the first climb. Rylan Schottig should be able to at least attach himself to the back of that train. You have Ryan Woods, who we know is a world-class mountain runner when he's at his best. Ryan Atkins, you just don't doubt the guy anymore. Mick Girillo isn't considered one of the top climbers in the sport generally, but he's near there, and he just put up 171 on a Nordic track on the 15% 15-minute challenge. On top of that, you have Hawk, you have someone like Mark Batres. He can run uphill with it. He's always top 5 getting to the top of the mountain in Tahoe. So I think you have 7, 8 gentlemen who should, on paper, be able to arrive at the summit within 30 to 45 seconds of each other.
And now on a camera, you folks can't see. We had a shot of the men's field. I think we're finally getting to it here, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see who we got.
That's Schottig for sure.
Rylan.
Yep.
Is he in the lead right now is the question, or did we miss Hawk Call?
Yep.
There's
Hawk Call right there.
So that answers our Rylan mentality question. What's he coming here to do?
He's coming
Hawk
here.
just
Well,
had to
and look,
restart.
we're having a little bit of struggle here at a Hawk Call. This is granted, we are not getting the best shot right now, but he's taking burpees.
Oh my goodness.
We're about to find out how good Hawk really is at running, aren't we, folks?
Well,
And
so
this-
what's interesting there is Hawk may have been able to take the time to get that obstacle right, but he panicked and said, I'll just take 90 seconds of burpees and whatever, let's go. I don't want to waste the time. I don't want to risk it, he said. I'm not letting this guy get any further ahead.
I believe Stairway to Sparta is a penalty loop. So that
He
would
left on a
probably
penalty
encourage him to zoom ahead and just take the penalty because he knows he's rolling. And what he's doing is he watched Rylan scoot right up and over that and take off. Every second he stood there waiting and retrying was just another 5-10 meters of gap.
Now
He
I
made
know
a mistake.
the screen is
He
fuzzy,
made a
but
mistake by
that may
moving
have
on. Go ahead.
That may have been Sean Stevens-Wales, who just finished Olympus right there.
Yeah, it did look like him. And I want to get back to Hawk saying I do believe that was a mistake to move on because he didn't really give it an honest go. And 2, it tells us that those are slick. There's no way Hawk is abandoning that without there being dew and having grip issues. I just don't see that happening because he did not have a problem with that in Utah in very dry conditions. So that confirms up on the top, we've got a little bit of slickness going on because no way does Hawk fail that with good conditions.
Yeah, as you can see, someone else going straight up and over, and we can't get quite the look on it we were hoping for.
Is that Atkins?
That might have been.
Yep,
That
yep.
is Ryan Atkins. So there you
this
go.
is-
There's your top 3.
This is indicative of race experience. People who have run many Spartan races and have seen it all are not struggling with this. Hawk, for as good as he's shown to be, he's done what, 4 races in his life? That's
really
he's
low
a
number.
rookie. Most of us did 4 races in our first 6 months in the sport. We saw all the conditions you can see, and then we worked on trying to get as fast as Hawk. Hawk came in and just won right off the bat, and so we expect him to be his father right now. But his father raced 25 times his first calendar year. He doesn't have that body of work yet to draw off of.
Well, I think, Bracken, most of us assumed that his father would have taught him many of the tricks, because many of the tricks that you see athletes employing in races are things that Hobie Call had to figure out and everyone else copied. So he is the godfather of it all, so to speak. He is the forerunner who created the moves like the rolling through the barbed wire. Like Hobie Call was the first to do that. Flipping over the vertical cargo net. Like Hobie Call is the guy that gave us this bag of moves that we use in everyday races. And you could assume, maybe he taught his son, but Hawk still has some things to learn.
Yeah, what we saw was Hawk panicked. And we've all done it in a race. When something suddenly doesn't go well for a brief moment, it's not even like a conscious decision that Hawk just made to go run the penalty loop. It was almost like his autonomic system just took over and said, go run that and get it done. When if he could have logicked it out, he probably would have stayed there and tried to get that. And we've all done that, right? We see a race or feel like it's instantly slipping away and we panic and we just make a decision that we didn't even really think through. And I think that's a case of what we just saw there, because I've done it plenty. And you're in no position cerebrally to make anything other than a split second, not well thought out decision. And I'm not saying maybe he wouldn't have got it and he would still be stuck there frustrated. But I'm a betting man, and I would have guessed he would have gotten it if he just composed himself briefly. What do you think, Brad?
That's a good point. It's a good point. And if we look at experience level as well, even if we lump him together with Rylan, because you look at Atkins, what was Atkins doing last year? I don't know, his 100th Spartan race. What was Woods doing last year? His 100th Spartan race. But Rylan is relatively new. But what was Rylan doing last year? He was doing OCR. What was he doing prior to that? He was doing mountain bike racing, where you might get a mechanical and you've got to stop and address it. And I can make time back up. These guys have been mountain racing and doing things where you can lose seconds or minutes and your race isn't over. He came directly off of D1 track and cross country, where if you trip and fall, your race is done. It's over. If you veer off course, your race is done. You can't lose tenths, let alone minutes. And so you're right. He's hardwired to not be able to absorb little things like that to the same extent that some other people are right now.
Well, we got a shot of Shadeg right now at the Z wall, obstacle 7, I believe, and he looks very confident right now. This is a pretty big lead that he has right now because of the issues that Hawk Call had, and I would say at least a minute back to Ryan Atkins.
Yeah, I would say this race, Bracken predicted a conga line of 7, and this is actually more blown open already than I thought. I think we had Rylan and Hawk throwing punches at each other, and they built a lead is what happened. And right now, is that lead going to be eaten right back up, or is he just going to open it even further?
And guys, this is only 5K in. I seriously thought we'd have 7 guys within at most a minute. We have this 1.5-minute gap already, and it's 5 kilometers in. Where did this come from? These 20 seconds per mile faster than everyone else right now. That's
miss.
That was a miss. That looks like a miss. It's hard to see. Again, signal, we apologize. We're working on improving that for you guys right now. But that's a miss from Rylan Shadeg, and all of a sudden, Hawk Call's right back in this race, and Ryan Atkins may be in first when it's all said and done.
Oh, that's a tough one to watch, isn't it? You know how he's feeling, man. And that's not what that penalty loop Hawk just did. Is not nearly as severe. Hawk is going to have a shot of life put in him that you can't even express when he rolls in seeing Rylan doing burpees there.
And he's not that far behind. It's like throwing an interception. You can be on the greatest drive of your life. Everything's clicking. You're in the zone, and suddenly an interception. You just got to sit down and wait. That 30 burpee penalty just takes you from the top of the world to just straight down into the gutter immediately. Oh, another.
Hits it.
No, he
No?
burpeed. He
Miss!
threw low
Oh, that was a
left.
miss. And now you
Fellas.
have your top 2 men missing, and then here comes Ryan Atkins.
Oh. I said I wanted
cannot
shakeups,
give a
folks,
gift.
didn't I?
You cannot give Ryan Atkins a gift like this at a championship race, because once he's got his foot on your throat, he is not going to take it off.
No, I mean, you have to come correct when you're going to beat the world champion. You cannot snatch a victory from the jaws of defeat, or defeat from the jaws of victory. You can't. If you have victory in sight, everything must be perfect to do that. 2 penalties now for Hawk. And the craziest thing is, Hawk might still win this race. 2 penalties in the first 5K.
Very impressed with Sean Stevens' whale going toe-to-toe with Ryan Atkins right now.
Now, this was my dark horse, Sean Stevens' whale, just because we know he loves to climb. We know he loves this territory. As I think you guys didn't get a sight of this, but Ryan Woods just cleared the stairway to Sparta. This is a great opportunity for him to jump into the mix. You know, it's sort of home turf. And Ryan Atkins just hit. He's gone. We're about to find out if Sean Stephen Whale is going to stay in this fight for a top 2 position.
Oh, I'd give just about anything to be able to see this.
Service on mountains is tough, folks.
You know, if only we had a helicopter or a drone or something like that. But it's coming, guys. Stay with us.
See, the irony of watching every Ultra Beaster throw a perfectly clear spear throw as we're waiting for the men to get up there, and then to have that happen. We'll get eyes on them again.
Okay. We're looking at another climb up ahead. And now this race course, again, has 2 huge climbs. And there's an extra little climb thrown in there on the first descent. You kick back up for a little punch in the gut before descending some more. So really 3 climbs, but two of significance that really will shake the race open. Again, we've seen Shadeg take burpees, Hawk Call take burpees, and a penalty loop. So he's basically trying to give the race away. But could you see either of them tracking Atkins back down? They're probably only about 10 to 15 burpees behind him.
The head of steam that Ryland had going, he looked like he was on a different level today than even what we've seen in the past. The only question is, he's shown the ability to mismanage his effort. I'm not convinced that was going to happen today, but burpees do a lot towards ensuring that happens. Ryan doesn't need a whole lot of extra help to win a race. So could they still come back? Absolutely. Ryland looks so strong, but would you ever bet against Ryan Atkins when he spotted a victory or spotted a lead already?
What do you guys think is the reason for 2 spear throw misses and maybe more? We don't know there. Do you think it's simply nerves? Do you think it's slick conditions? Do you think it's climbing and throwing a spear? Is it coming off of a Z wall? Like, what do we attribute 2 of the best who I have not seen miss this year? Why are they missing their spears, fellas? What do you think?
Most likely, I presume it's high heart rate. I just think you've got the high heart rate revved up. You're young. Both of these guys pretty young. You're all amped because you're in the lead. Each of you, if you hit your spear, you're clear out and away in first position. And I wouldn't call that pressure, but I wouldn't say that pressure isn't a factor there. There is some element of expectation there. If I can just hit this, I'm leading a North American Championship race. Like, there's something to that. And it just leads to mistakes.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and call it pressure. Neither of those 2 have ever led a championship race. And there are levels of pressure. It doesn't mean you choke. It's just sometimes you let another thought into your mind, or it stops you from accessing your full decision-making capability. This appears to be slightly uphill. You just got the top of a big climb. You're a little more fatigued, and sometimes pressure just masks your decision-making a little bit.
I think we just got a sight of women. The women's leaders right here. Yep, Webster and Cook Clark together We finally got a perfect shot we were looking for, guys.
This is all we wanted. And obviously I was wrong. She is wearing a white top.
No, that's okay, Bracken. We all make mistakes. But I think it's important to note that what I was predicting Webster would want to do, which is kind of just stalk Emma Cook Clark through the opening half of this race, is playing out. It looks precisely, which is, and maybe Cook Clark again is saying, hey, I don't need to over rev things here. As you see Ryan Woods finally stick one. Love to see that.
I think we got is that a Josiah Middow a little further back, or is it's tough to tell who we got here? Maybe not.
Someone just missed again. Oh, I cannot stand watching spear misses.
So on the other screen, we got somebody stuck at Stairway to Sparta, one of the women. And
Wow.
I'm trying to figure out who that is, but she got up there.
Is that Brusa?
Is that it? Is that Annie or Brusa?
I think that's Annie. Based on the gaps,
Oh, yeah.
that would make the most sense, wouldn't it?
Yep, right on.
Yep, there's Annie.
Yep, Annie Doobie.
We've not seen her get stuck
No,
like
she's-
that before.
She's still very close, though. I mean, what is that? Maybe a minute 15, minute 30?
Jesse Bruce is he went to the end of the spear throw line and then didn't like something, walked his way back down to the right. This is one of those, if he hits it, good job, it was worth it. If he misses it, that's just added time.
Speaking from experience, I had quite a debacle in one of these series races early in the year with a bad spear throw, and I highly recommend taking the time to find one you like first. So I approve, Jesse. Good job.
He appears to have made it.
Bear with us, everybody. We are on the back side of the mountain, and sometimes, you know, what we go is we get these perfect cell signals on the front side, and then on the back side, nothing really gets through, and this will clear. This will get better. So stick with us. I mean, look at this terrain. It's still rocky. We're descending over like it's rock hopping at this point. So what do we have to look forward to as we move forward?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's not on camera here, but we got a burpee pit that looks more packed than, I don't know, Bon Jovi concert. It's ridiculous, folks. I don't know why I said Bon Jovi, just came to me, but it's insane. I don't know why everybody's missing their spear. You see it in mountain races way more than you see it in any other races. Flat races, you don't see it like this. It's these mountain courses in which that burpee pit gets stacked every time. Never the flat ones. You ever notice that, fellas?
Yeah, and that's sports. Anything that requires releasing an object with your hands starts in your legs. Late game shooters in basketball, they start coming up a little bit short. At late game pitchers who are deep into their innings, they start losing velocity, and it's not because of their arms. It's because as you fatigue, you stop driving as much power with your legs. And mountains destroy your legs. You get to the top of a climb, you have a little bit less in your legs, and if you don't compensate upper body, you miss.
Well, that burpee pit is cleared, Kirk. So
It wasn't a minute ago, I swear.
Someone's doing very good burpees in there.
yeah, you guys don't have eyes on right now, but that was a really great set of burpees. As we're getting a shot of Olympus here.
And Olympus is one of the harder obstacles to get through if there is some dew on it. It's they changed it from years past from this more tacky plywood to this really thick or slick plastic coated wood, and it's like not even the same obstacle. It might as well be a different obstacle completely. And then you add in some dew or some moisture, and it's very failable. So we might see it right here. We got Chris on it, I believe.
And Chris is
Yeah, Chris
historically a zero drop runner. She runs in ultra shoes. And the moment she got on this wet technical mountain, she threw on VJs. And I have to assume a lot of that is simply for the grip that she's going to get in situations like this in the rain.
Yeah, and this particular material, you mentioned it, Kirk. This surface is so much more slippery when it gets wet than what we had before with just traditional wood. Now, this surface here on the stairway, I believe, is back to wood, painted wood here. So this is a little bit easier to get a grip on, but still pretty difficult when it's slick. And it looks like she's taking the penalty as well.
These
Looks like
athletes
that was
must be
another-
feeling something that we're not seeing. Because she's a grit athlete. She's part of the grit OCR, which is just predicated around obstacle proficiency and grip strength. So if she's moving around, then clearly there's something going on that obstacle that we can't feel.
Well, you know, the
and she
grips
made
were
that
very high.
split-second
And
decision, just like Hawk did. I think she didn't even give it a real honest chance. And again, with her grip efficiency, I'm surprised she didn't. But again, it's one of those things you don't even think through. You just do it. Your body does following nothing. It's like on autopilot, right? She just made the decision without even really thinking about it.
Well, they've
now we
used
are at the
these.
Z-wall right now for Lindsay Webster and Emma Cook-Clark, and we know right after that, as Lindsay gets through already, right after that is the spear throw. So if ever there was a time for both of them to hit, when they're side by side in a championship race, this is that time. The last thing that we want to see is one of them make it and one of them miss.
Before they throw here, one potential issue on that stairway to Sparta, they have those rock climbing grips up there, but they tend to use plastic ones, and they get so slippery when there's any amount of dew or rain on them. There's burpees.
Is that burpees for Lindsay Webster? Oh, my gosh.
I think I heard the
missed.
F word, which would insinuate a missed spear, I believe.
Yeah, it wasn't F, yeah.
Emma Cook-Clark also misses, though. And
That's
now we
kind of
have
her
two
to give
sets
us
of
a
burpees
battle.
going. I mean, this actually might work out better in the grand scheme of this race, but Annie Doobie, if she hits, pulls herself right back into this race.
Get
So now you
upright
can
there,
have a battle
Emma.
with
I don't know
three.
if I like those burpees. Let's get upright.
Now,
Well-
the volunteer's on it right now, so.
They're giving us the battle we wanted. We
Yeah,
don't want Big
I
Bear
actually
again,
like
right?
this
We
more.
don't want it decided by burpees.
No, I actually like this more because now it's not only going to be that the burpees don't decide the race. In some ways they will, because now it turns into a sloppier, uglier, grittier grind for the rest of this thing for both of them.
All right, this is a legitimate question. Has anyone in the history of the sport won more races after doing burpees than Lindsay Webster? Do you think anyone has more experience winning races after failing a spear throw than her?
Absolutely not.
Not a-
Nobody. Well,
not
maybe
a
Ryan.
chance.
Maybe Ryan would be the only one even remotely, but I would say she's
I think
had
he's pretty
more
good at the
where
spear.
she's missed the spear. He is. And
I think she
would
went
actually say
3
that
years
the-
without making one or something like that.
the spear probably cost him at least one, if not two championships. So
True.
yeah, so that's the thing is she comes back from it. He had the misfortune of
going.
racing Jonathan Albin.
Oh, just 5-second difference.
Well, that's a close one. That's pretty close.
But she's walking out.
Yeah, I think
I
she'll
was
be okay.
hoping
She
we'd
knows
see
that she can
Annie
accelerate
catch him
on this
there.
climb. Yes, that would have made things really exciting to see Annie Doobie insert herself into the trio of athletes on this next climb. The hope is we can get this shot going again, really clean. And we're at the Tyrolean Traverse, and that's Shadeg again in the lead.
Yeah, we have to assume he did faster
And I've not
burpees than
seen
Hawk.
anyone near him.
Well, he's been training for a lot of these hybrid racing events. I think his pure strength and his ability to go very high intensity is a little bit beyond where Hawks should be given the training styles that they're putting in.
Yeah, he
I'm
I'm
started
going to
his
assume
burpees.
he's feeling
Hawk is
pretty
coming
good
through
there
right here.
because he was just talking to the cameraman. So I think he's not only in the lead, I think he's feeling good in the lead.
Oh, he looks really good. He's back up to speed with a really nice open
Hawk
stride.
is probably about 45.
Where is Ryan Atkins?
Did you hear Hawk is probably 45 seconds behind, according to cameraman right there, or
Here's
volunteer.
Hawk. Right here, right here.
Hawk Call coming in, and then Atkins somewhere in the mix.
Hold on. So let's make sense of this. Didn't Ryan Atkins leave before Hawk and Ryland were probably done with their burpees? So would that mean that these two gentlemen outran him already going uphill? If so, that is astronomically impressive.
Ryan's coming down the hill right now.
Yep, Ryan's coming right now. So
You can
yeah,
see
so
Ryan
to answer
right
your question,
coming behind that trailer.
Wow.
In between what we saw from the dunk wall where we left them to now was only the bucket carry. So on hills and carry, both men went past him.
well, that is stunning. I am actually blown away that is the case. But Ryan Atkins knows I've got a whole second half of climbing in this race.
With this gap, I mean, look at this gap. Did we miss something? Did they get
Actually,
done with
that's not
burpees
Ryan.
before he got
I
there?
apologize. That's not Ryan.
He's got to be out in first place. There's no way.
We
He
got
must
some-
be out
Sean
in first
Stevens'
place.
whale
This must be
is
Sean
in
Stevens'
third
whale.
place.
So
Yeah, I'm just not buying it.
that is, of
Ryan-
course,
Ryan has not
I'm with
passed
you.
me.
I'm with
Ryan has
you,
not passed our
Bracken. I
cameraman.
believe that our cameraman arrived after
Ryan has
Ryan
not
Atkins
passed
came
me.
through here.
Nope.
I
I've been
don't
here.
disagree
Cameraman
that
is
Ryan
saying
has
that
not
Ryan
passed
has
him,
not
but-
passed him. Yep.
Yeah, he's saying it, but
Ryan
I
missed
think he may
spear.
have missed Ryan.
Ryan missed spear.
Ryan Atkins
Oh.
missed the spear.
Nope. I'm positive.
Okay. So that handles that. Ryan
missed
did
the
miss
spear
his
for
spear.
Sean.
I thought we saw him. I guess we didn't see him hit the spear. That is stunning. So your top three men
think
all
this is
missed the
Ryan.
spear.
Sean Stevens' whale. This is that breakout moment we've been waiting for.
We talked
Yep,
about
here
it
comes
in
Ryan
depth
five.
on our podcast this week about how Sean Stevens Wales has the potential to do this and put it together. He's one who just hasn't quite shown his potential on race course
4 or
yet.
5.
And now here he is in position. And we got Mikhail Girillo in front of Ryan Atkins, I believe.
Now this
And
race
Atkins
is
does
not
not
over.
look happy. Yes, it is not over, but there's a distinctness to Ryan Atkins' stride when he's really feeling it, when he's feeling good, and he doesn't quite have that same pep in this moment. He looks a bit sluggish to me, and 30 burpees will do that to you. And I think also being dropped out of that lead 3 can do that to a guy like him. Because now he's in a battle for 4th or 5th.
Now, Mick, that we see there on the
Shake.
Tyro Traverse there is, we call him the Manitoba Mountain Goat. Mick lives in the flattest place on earth, right here. You will not see another man who lives in flat terrain, run mountains like you see Mikhail Girillo, who's right behind Ryan Atkins. And this guy can climb. This is the gentleman Bracken referred to had run what we call the treadmill challenge in a 1.71 score, which is very quick. It's an uphill testing measure we use in this sport. And so we thought Mikhail could be in the top 5, and here he is sticking his nose into it. And Mick is one of those guys who executes flawlessly. The last time I had known Mick to make a mistake in a big race, I couldn't even tell you. And so Mick is one of those guys who's going to go up, get to work, and get the job done. And here he is fighting for a top 5 position, running with Ryan Atkins. Fantastic job, Mick. What do you make of that, Bracken?
Well, they're both closers. They are both people who don't lose spots generally as the race goes on. So obviously he's doing everything right. Ryan's had his big hiccup and has to get back to work here, but Mick's in a fantastic position to try to hook his trailer up to Atkins and be pulled through this course. It's going to be a brutal day for Mick. He's earned the right to now get a whooping from the world champ, but that world champ might just drag him to a podium if he plays his cards right.
And you got Chris Rogloski right now on the spear throw as well. And at least she stuck that. That's fantastic for her. You know, those heavy legs didn't want to be doing any burpees right now. As we pause for a brief commercial for the best obstacle course racing news, race results, podcasts, and live race coverage, be sure to follow the OCR Report on Instagram. Follow at the OCR Report on Instagram today. And again, Chris Rogloski, really, it's just impressive that she's even out here at this point. But she's currently sitting in a top 5 position, which is just stunning.
Yeah, if I had to do a scouting report on her at this point, it would just consist of me tearing up the sheet of paper and throwing it into the air in frustration because there is no report on her. she's defying everything we know to be true. You can't race multiple 100 milers in the same like quarter of a year and do well at 10K distance. You can't do multiple disciplines of racing and win a world championship. She did. None of what she does makes sense to what most athletes would do. And so I've given up trying to figure it out. And now I'm just going to be impressed by it.
What's that?
Oh, it's impressive. It's truly incredible.
I know.
But at the same time, she's so young. We've barely even tapped into the potential that she has. Like, it's only going to get better as she maybe hyper focuses on one event more than the others instead of trying to be jack of all trades. I mean, she's certainly disproving the master of none concept. But at the same time, like, if she were to focus exclusively on, say, training for like beast distance or training for ultra, could you see another level out of her?
Yeah, it's that age-old question. Is she doing it because of it or despite it? And what seems to be true for her is that she is so mentally invigorated by the pursuit of all things that it's almost doing a disservice to say specialize.
Yeah, you find athletes that are new in the sport and are doing well in the sport that they want to dip their toes into every single waters, right? They want to test everything out. They want to play. They want to find their niche. And what happens is these good athletes typically find out like, oh, I'm naturally better at this than this, or I tend to place better in this than this. Well, when you're somebody like Chris Roglaski and like a Ryan Atkins in his early years, Chris keeps showing up to things and she keeps kicking butt. Her limitations have not forced her to make a decision yet. And that's a good thing. And it's also a trap because it potentially leads you to never see your ceiling in anything. But she's also having a lot of fun. And I haven't seen many people run and race with the amount of joy Chris does. And so if that means changing up what race you're doing every single weekend and it doesn't even make sense, rip that paper up, throw it in the air, Bracken. I don't care. I like watching it.
Well, let's take this a step further, Kirk, because I think it's also important to note that just because she's running all of these races doesn't mean that she's not training specifically for one type of race, and that she might be running the Leadville 100, but treating it as an event that she's excited to do and to be out there, but that is also just great training for her, and that she's still focused on the OCR season as her primary objective.
Well, think about what she did. She's the Hyrox world champion and 7th place finisher at Leadville 100 within 3 months of each other. I'm talking like historical scope of your career. If you could do both of those things, people would be like, look at the transformation that athlete had. She did it in 3 months. That is nonsensical. Those sports do not align at all.
Staying on the Chris train, what do you fellas think? I mean, not that she needs our advice because she's killing it, but what do you think Chris should do? What do you think? Should we keep seeing it all? Do you think that she's shown like more dominance in one discipline than another, or is it still too early to tell? What do you think? What do you think, Dave?
I think that she should be focused on seeing how far she can push her obstacle racing. For a couple of reasons. The first being like, yes, she is the Hyrox defending world champion, but I think she is quite a distance from where like a Lauren Weeks would be if she was ready to race that day and wasn't 7 months pregnant the day of that race. Like, I think Lauren Weeks has put a gap between herself and the rest of the women's field when she is fit and trained and conditioned, and that she really is built specifically for that event, although she has a wide range of ability as well. And then you look on the other side, and Chris finished 7th at Leadville, but about 5 hours behind the women's winner. So yes, but she could certainly close that, but I don't know that 100 miles is going to be her specialty either. I think I see her as best suited for challenging the top athletes in OCR specifically because of her versatility.
It depends.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that.
There's nothing.
Continue.
There's nothing. I've said this before, but I look at her career and think I would have screwed it up if I were coaching her. I would have tried to put her into some sort of lane. And she's kind of formless as an athlete. She just goes to whatever lane she feels like. I look at her almost the way, Kirk, we would talk about starting up a new workout plan or weight loss for an athlete, where you take care of low-hanging fruit and leave the bigger steps for when you need them. Like, you don't want to go all in on week one and do every single thing known to man. You just start with one change and you make that. And for me, I think that's what she does with her career. She's doing everything. It all fires her up. And the moment she starts to deal with injury or fatigue or just lack of mental focus or drive, then she picks one thing and focuses on it for a little bit. Because until then, she's having, like you said, she's having more fun than anyone I know. So I would just ride it out until she needs to make a change. And that is the exact opposite advice I would give most people.
Well, yeah,
It's the opposite advice you would give any athlete.
Yeah, she's like the gym version. I have a personal training business, and I'll have a client walk in and say, I want to lose a bunch of fat and gain a bunch of muscle at the same time. And I'll be like, that's almost impossible to do. At very best, it's super difficult, and you're spinning your wheels. And Chris is doing the version of that with her endurance training. She's losing a bunch of fat and gaining a bunch of muscle at the same time. She's the exception, not the rule, right? It is rare when you can see somebody be able to do something like that in the gym or in the endurance space. And it is very impressive. I think, now again, she don't need advice, but you look at the trajectory of like an endurance athlete, an ultra athlete, and they can perform well all the way into their late 40s, early 50s even, you can see. Chris is what, 24? I like to see somebody use those fiery legs right when they're young and then beat the crap out of them when they get into their late 30s and early 40s and go run as long as your heart desires. But I don't think she's going to listen to me, and I'm not even going to try.
I mean, none of us have the credentials that she does, so none of our opinions actually really matter when it comes to these things. As would be the case, none of our opinions really matter when it comes to the majority of the athletes who are out here on this course today. Simply, if it was one of my athletes that I was coaching, I would say, let's find you a track, Bracken, like you said. But again, I think to your point, if you are running with joy and enjoying everything that you're doing, and that is allowing you to train hard, and as long as you are not injuring yourself, you're doing it right. Because when it comes down to it, and this is what I try and tell my athletes all the time, if it's a lifestyle. So if you learn to love the process, you're already going to succeed.
I think Gelati has that trademarked. You might want to be careful with that. It's a lifestyle there, Megiddo. With Chris, oftentimes you see this with athletes in that the general consensus of everyone else's thoughts don't align with what the athlete wants. We get caught up in championships or hitting PRs or finding your ceiling. And we want to say, well, this person was the best blank ever. But there's something to be said for being the best jack of all trades ever. Even if it costs her a world title in one or two or three specific venues, there is something to be said for being the most versatile, well-rounded, non-focused athlete that anyone's ever seen. So I don't know if she would even need to conform to anyone's, we want you to defend your High Rocks title, or we want you to go win Leadville, or we want you to be the Spartan World Champion. She probably could do any one of those things, but what if she was the second or third best at all of them? That might just be more impressive.
So, okay, if we're going to go down this road, let's start to put out the who are the most versatile athletes that we have seen in these sports. I think personally the name that comes to mind would be Hunter McIntyre. Maybe an Isaiah Vidal is in that kind of conversation of like can do whatever he's been thrown into, and maybe even Ryan Atkins just because of his range.
Yeah, Ryan Atkins, if he would, put a focus on anything like a High Rocks or he was second at Tough Mudder X to Hunter when he really gave it a go. Ryan Atkins has to be included in that. From sprint to beast to ultra to 100-mile distances, he's been able to check all of those boxes. And there's no doubt if Ryan Atkins ran the Leadville 100 last weekend, the same weekend that Chris did, Ryan Atkins would still be in the top 5 in this race right now. I mean, it's speculation, but I would say the best equivalent to what Chris is doing is Ryan Atkins, other than maybe not dipping his toes into the High Rocks waters. What do you think, Bracken?
Yeah, I love Hunter. and I'm amazed by the things Isaiah has been able to do, but none of them are doing 100 milers. None of them are doing 24-hour races with the level of success that Ryan has done. And so I think the conversation starts and ends with Ryan. We've never seen anyone like it. And the difference is that Ryan can drop down and do anyone else's distance if he wants to. He's won a 3K championship. He's second at, like you said, at Tough Mudder, which was what, 1 mile total or something like that.
15.
Like he can drop
15-minute
down
event.
untrained and do it. I think that Rylan Shadig has the ability to join that conversation. I think Lindsay's vastly underrated for how good of an athlete she is. You see it on Spartan games, but it's Atkins.
Mm.
Well,
So
I
where
mean,
do we
this is
think
great
the men
company,
are?
so-
Yeah, where do we think the men are out in the course? We're about an hour 15 in, hour 20 in. I believe. You know, Jack Bauer predicted this race to be somewhere in the 2:15 range when he spoke with us, but seeing how the timestamp worked out when these fellas hit the spear, I'm thinking
slower.
it might run a little long. Yep, which I could believe. So are we only halfway through this race? And what we have now, folks, in case you're wondering, is we have one of our rabbits driving all the way back to sort of the next gauntlet of obstacles to get us coverage on the action, and then we'll get you an update on how things are panning out. So right now, in the meantime, we're getting some of the women coming through up top the mountain, but our rabbits driving back, which is like a 10-mile drive, I guess, on the roads to get back to get eyes on the next stop on the course.
Kirk, I will say this, and that is, we did find that the first 5 or so miles of this race was slower than anticipated. I think we should also add that from that point forward, you have 2 descents and 1 climb. So I would expect an acceleration of the overall pace over the rest of the race. You know, obviously that in the second climb is going to be slow, but 2 big downhills should allow us to bring that average pace closer to the mean of what we expected.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe
we've seen
maybe
the
220.
vast majority of the climbing's done in terms of total feet gained. They have more climbs than they've done, but they have less total feet than they've done. So the downhilling will absolutely bring this. I still think Jack's right. We're going to be at the halfway point of the race at like, I don't know, an hour 30, and I still think we'll finish up at right around 2:15, 2:10.
All right, as
And-
we pause
and I'll
for
say
just a
it,
moment,
not-
the Spartan World Championship is December 3rd and 4th in Abu Dhabi. Signups are still open at Spartan.com. Whether you race open, wave, age group, or elite, you should be a part of the race experience of a lifetime. Sign up at Spartan.com. And Kirk, I'll send it back to you. I didn't mean to interrupt. Actually, we have Jack Bauer out there with an update out by the lake. Jack, what do you have for us?
Do you have an extra bag to stay warm? Oh my god. They'll help.
I'm not sure Jack is aware we got Jack on.
You can't see Jack right now, but he is asking for
There he
volunteers for an extra bag because
Hey
he's
guys,
freezing.
So there was no reception on the backside of the mountain, so apologize. It was really difficult to, get any information to you there. Chris Rogowski was in 4th place. I kind of... Okay. Hey guys.
Keep going, Jack.
Yeah, it is super cold, guys. It's just misty, and the wind, when you were on those exposed parts, probably 20, 30 miles an hour sustained the whole time. It's brutal out there. Every single piece of grass just soaking wet. You can never avoid being wet. It's pretty awful. But on the backside of the mountain, I apologize. Yep. Sorry for not having great coverage on the backside of the mountain. There was 0 reception. Chris Rogowski's in 4th place. I saw Ashley O'Hara and Margaret Jessen and a couple other a few minutes behind her, but Chris was about 3-4 minutes back of the pack. The last time that I saw, Emma was in the lead. Annie Doobie was in 2nd place. 3rd was Lindsay, but they were working in a pack for a while. But I know that you guys already saw their spear situation, so I'm sure you probably have a better feel on where the women are at right now. But probably 10 minutes, the men should be coming back, and I'll stick.
Well, thanks, Jack. And again, like we were talking about the impact that the cold could have on this race, and certainly it's hurting our cameraman a little bit. We talk about just being damp and just being wet and the impact that has over the course of a 2+ hour event.
For the beast.
The Beast. Yeah, if you see them here, you won't get to the finish line before them. They're running straight to it. Yeah.
And that's Gary B talking in the background right there. Again, we're looking at sites of inside this village. There's going to be a lot of racing that happens in the middle of this village, reminiscent of a finish that you might have at like a Tahoe or a Telluride course. It's pretty cool to get to run right through the center and the heart of some of these villages. As we see, the women's current leaders are now up on the board, and Annie Doobie is sitting in second place. Lindsay Webster dropped down to third. So curious to see how that happened.
Now, are we confident that that is actively their position, or was he referring to the last time he saw them coming up out of the technical section when Annie passed Lindsay moving back up? Is he getting intel from that, or is he hearing from the backside of the mountain what happened?
I believe he was telling us what he had seen last, so I think we'll have to go with that until we get otherwise.
Well, just like I'm not buying Ryan Atkins in fourth, and it turned out to be true, I'm not buying Lindsay Webster in third. They're going to have to prove me right or wrong. My track record today is I'm wrong on everything. I was wrong on the position of the men. I was wrong on Atkins, so I'm just going to power straight ahead with this one.
Don't forget about the salmon-colored shirt, Bracken. Don't forget about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all bad today.
You're all backwards over there. I will say, like, a testament to rabbits in this race, and we have some quick rabbits out there, and then we have world-class rabbits from time to time, right? Like sometimes hired on to these world-class athletes to follow these leaders around, because that's what it takes to be able to run with them. And I think just with some travel issues and things like that, we don't quite have the world class, we'll call it. We have the next tier below, which means you get to run with these athletes as long as you can, and then you need to pivot and find the next spot to get with these athletes. And it's just like such a testament to like how hard the rabbit's job is to follow these athletes. Like, you put me in a race and make me run with the leaders and hold a camera and keep it steady, and that's a whole nother level of effort there. And it's a tough gig being a rabbit out there. It's a very uncredited and unaccoladed position, and so I know they're working their best for us to get us the coverage we can today.
What I'm curious about
look at the
now
distance.
Is chase pack.
Go on, Bracken.
We've seen the podium. We've seen what it looks like up there. But we also know that there are a few failable obstacles left. And at a championship where it pays out 10 deep, there's some real reason to be 4th through 10th. I'm curious what this chase pack looks like, because there are some names we expected to see in here that we're not seeing and hearing yet.
Well, Josiah is a name that really pops to me. You can take it, Kirk.
Oh, I was just going to say, well, you mentioned payout. And it's something we actually haven't talked about yet. And a lot of these athletes really rely on these payouts. And this is the biggest payout we've seen in OCR this year. Do you guys know off the top of your head what we're looking at for payouts for this event on men's and women's side? Because it's pretty hefty. I believe the winner's taking home $8 or $10 grand, aren't they?
I think it's 12.
I mean, money only takes you so far, right? Eventually rent comes due and your body gives you and your mind gives you what it will give you. But let's be real, that is some pretty good incentive now, isn't it? Like, there's a lot on the line in this race that we don't even think about. We have a handful of professional athletes in this sport that rely on income from race winnings and sponsors. And so, like, people are running for their literal lives at times in these events. And sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that as we're just watching this as casual fans. It's not like these athletes have contracts like big NFL players do, and they're guaranteed their millions per year. It's like you got to show up and perform to make a living, and so I just think it like adds an interesting element to these races that we often forget about. And I'm wondering what athletes keep money in the top of mind as they're out there. Like, I got to do this. I got to pay rent. I got to pay for my flight back home. Like, can you think of the athletes that are really relying on this, guys? Like, Bracken, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And what a lot of sponsor deals are in sports like this where they can't guarantee money monthly for you is they'll podium match or their bonus match or they'll prize money match. So if you manage to dip into the money, you know you're getting it back double because your sponsor then is going to match whatever you get for your finishing position. So 5th, 6th, 7th place really does matter because you can double that for a lot of these athletes.
Well, I've got the prize money up in front of me right now, guys. If you're curious for the exact numbers, winning athletes, male and female, $12,000. Obviously, this is a huge prize, but second place is still $8,000 and third is still $5,000. And you actually go down $2,000 and then $1,000 for fifth. And then from there, there's still some really good payouts. Sixth is almost as good as fifth. You're getting 900, 800, 600, 400, and then 300. So yeah, your flight is basically covered if you can get a top 10 finish. But really, that big differentiator is if you can get a podium spot right there, you're dipping into $5,000 or higher. I mean, that's a really nice little payout. And you're right, Bracken. A lot of this is podium bonuses from sponsors. That's where a lot of these athletes, they tend to really pick up that extra money. And so if the difference for them is, and a podium often counts if it's at a championship race to be a top 5 finish, getting in that top 5 makes a huge difference for these athletes. That Miss Spear, that's an expensive Miss Spear.
Yeah, that $1,000 Miss Spear from 5th to 6th is a $2,000 if you've got a podium match from a sponsor. And as we've dabbled in that life, I put my career on hold for several years to pursue this. And as someone who's been through that, it's terrifying to know that, listen, I have to show up and clear my rent check for the next month, or I've got diapers to buy, or I've got bills to pay. And sitting in 4th through 6th isn't always the happiest place for an athlete, but if you know this is rent next month, that's a little extra motivation to close that race out hard, even when the podium spots have already been given away.
Well, Bracken,
and I mean, I look at
Colorado, and you lived for 2 years out there, and you tried to make your living in this sport. Put yourself in their shoes. And Bracken in Colorado, what would $12,000 mean to Bracken in Colorado, being a professional athlete? You winning this race, like what would that do for you?
Well, that's 6 more months of rent out there. That extends it. We came home at about just before the 3-year mark. That would have been the 3.5-year mark. $12,000 out there, and rent's not cheap. And so $12,000 buys you another half year of living the lifestyle, assuming you're able to cover all your other ends. Now you got a podium match from a sponsor, and maybe they're not going to match 12. Maybe they'll match 6 or 4 or 2. That buys you another quarter of the year. These athletes who are living in that lifestyle, it buys them more time to pursue the dream.
And I think a lot of these athletes, they look at it from a professional standpoint, and then a lot of them look at it a little more realistically. And that is, look, we recognize there are a few people out there that are legitimately making enough money to make this a career. And the rest of them are looking at it like, this is a tremendous hobby of mine. And if I can earn enough money to cover all of the costs that are associated with this, from travel and hotels to all of the equipment and things that you need for training, then it is a tremendously successful year. And so, a lot of these athletes are saying, if I can make $5,000 or $10,000 over the course of the whole year doing this, I'm thrilled, because that covers the cost right there.
You're right. Is it possible to see the graphics for the men and the women top 5 at the same time for people who are searching for anything like that? Or are we one at a time is our limit right now?
I think we're one at a time.
All right, let's pop that up there. I want to see the women again, if possible. I want to see who's sitting 4 or 5 right now.
We'll see. This should be quick.
Chris and Casey. Casey Monroe.
Casey Monroe.
It's close.
From the live results, too.
Like at the halfway point at Tyro.
I'm going to pull up results here as we're chatting.
But I think by this point,
well, that's a move. And she's somebody.
Okay, so let's take a look at the map.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Oh, no. Just talk about Casey Monroe. We'll look at the map after.
Yeah, well, I think Casey's a case of like kind of always the bridesmaid, we'll call it, in a sense where she's always just out of, I feel like, talking points, right? We focus on Lindsay, we focus on Emma, we focus on Rhea and Rose when they're here, and Alex Walker. And if you remember back to Leanne Wastoney, who we haven't seen recently, Casey Monroe's kind of filled that Leanne Wastoney spot where Casey Monroe's like working pretty hard, has that potential, always flirting with that top 5, but never really gets sort of the recognition or credit she deserves. And she's another one who at her top end, like we can see in top 5s consistently. She has proven in the past she's capable. And I know she's a busy mom and she's balancing life pretty hard as well. And so it's good to see her, like, give her the recognition I believe she deserves by seeing her in the top 5. She's not somebody that surprises me as in the top 5. I would have loved to see how that played out for her to get there. But again, she's one of those, if you didn't know who she was, it's because she's always like in the shadows of like the big 5 players, we'll call it. And somebody who's just waiting to break through. And that would be how I would describe Casey Monroe, David.
Hey, I think you're spot on. And also, she's had a lot of success in mountain events. So we look at Palmerton, and she's won on that course before. And yes, it's an East Coast mountain, but it is a big East Coast mountain, and it's steep and it's rugged and it's ugly. And have you raced there, Kirk? Brackett and I have done some events there, and it's a kick in the teeth, steeper than the climbs that they're hitting today.
Oh yeah, I raced there. That's the one time I went off course. I got real fond memories of Palmerton, David. You were commentating that race, and I was just lost in the woods, just beating my own drum, David. That's one of the perks of obstacle course racing. It's bound to happen.
We've all been there. We've all been lost before.
Update through Stairway to Sparta, which was 7K into the race. On the female side, after Chris was Casey Monroe, then Jamie Brusa, Monica Homewood, Margaret Jessen, Amanda Nadeau, Ashley O'Hara, Natalie Miano, Kayla Brass, Sherry Boyle, Elizabeth Murray, and Teresa Chikova rounded out the top 15.
Could you go back and say the 1 through 10 again, just so I can let it sink in?
Yeah, 1st through 10th, clearing Stairway to Sparta, 7K in. Emma Cook-Clark, Lindsay Webster, 3 Annie Doobie, 4 Chris Rogloski, 5 Casey Monroe. She is the only one who's through Tyro Traverse. She's the 5th through Tyro Traverse at 13K. We're still waiting on the next athletes, which would be Jamie Brusa, Monica Homewood, Margaret Jessen, Amanda Nadeau, Ashley O'Hara, Natalie Miano, Kyla Brass, Sherry Boyle, Elizabeth Murray, and Teresa Chikova. That's top 15 for the females. Through Tyro Traverse, we have all 24 men through Tyro Traverse at the 13K mark. Rylan, Hawk, Sean Stevens-Whale, Ryan Atkins, and Mick Girillo, who we all saw come through. 6th place, Brendan Neely. I don't think we would have bet on Brendan being in 6th at this point, but this is that breakout race we've been talking about he could be having.
Another Canadian.
Then Isaac Sanderson, 8th Ryan Woods, 9th Josh Fry, who we also mentioned in the preview podcast could be having a breakout. 10th Mark Batras, 11 Austin Azar, 12 Jesse Bruce, 13 Josiah Middaugh, 14 Christopher Swanson, 15 Jeff Kraar. And then it goes on from there through the end all the way to 24. So we have some standouts here in the men. 6th place, Brendan Neely. 7th, Isaac Sanderson. 9th, Josh Fry.
And now Brendan Neely gave Mikhail Girillo, who we saw there running with Atkins, Brendan Neely gave Mick a good run for his money in a race recently in Red Deer, Canada, just outside of Calgary. So Brendan Neely, I believe, a little newer to the sport, but he's shown he's got some wheels because Mick has credentials and Brendan does not. And so it's just showing that Red Deer wasn't a fluke for him, that he's got some wheels. So that's good to see some new faces, some new blood. Pretty impressive.
Amanda Nadeau is now the 6th woman through Tyro Traverse at the 13K point.
Wow.
So she's 10K from the finish in 6th place.
That was a big charge out of Nadeau. And she's been around for a number of years as well. She's not a new face.
Yeah. Josiah's in 13th currently, I believe.
That is just wild. I did not expect to see him so far back, and I have to wonder if it's the cold that's affecting him.
4 days of bike racing. I believe he put in how many hundreds of gravel bike racing miles. And so his race was Monday through Thursday. He did a 4-stage gravel bike race and then
Took
had
one
only
day off
Friday
and then
off.
came here.
Add in a
That's a tough
missteer.
order.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to pause for station identification for the best live race coverage in the sport. Be sure to subscribe to the OCR Report on YouTube. The OCR Report is the only broadcast partner of Spartan. That is youtube.com/the OCR Report. Subscribe today. Okay, so let's go back to this. Like if you are racing 4 consecutive gravel bike races and then you get 1 day of rest, let's talk about Tour de France again. Let's go back to it because when these guys have rest days, they don't take the day off. They go out and ride like 60, 70 miles still, because if you do ride day after day after day and then you finally take a day off, your legs just get super stale. So, I mean, I'm assuming he had to use that as a travel day. He didn't get to train. So his 1 day of rest was probably flying here. And then he's back to racing again. That would explain the rough legs.
Now, he was traveling. The race happened up in this area, didn't it? So I don't believe he had much of a travel, but it almost doesn't matter. I've never felt more smashed from my running than coming off of a big bike.
We got camera 3. Look, it's Ryland Shadag, everybody. We got eyes on again. And he is running faster than how it appears in camera.
He is an impressive young man, isn't he? He runs with power. He runs aggressively. He knows in his heart of heart that this is a performance he's capable of. And now we're an hour 40 deep into this race. And he's alone at the very least because we don't have eyes on anybody else. And at this point, I don't think I've ever seen Ryland not close in a race to date. So you take a Ryland Shadig, hour 40 into a race in which he is known as a closer. He has the lead now, barring any major catastrophe. I'm not going to say this is locked up because we know there's people hunting him, but this looks really, really good for him. He's not known to fade. What is your take, Bracken? Like, do you think, now we're speculating, we don't see the gaps here, but do you think that this is starting to look pretty promising?
I mean, he's passing all the checkpoints with flying colors right now, but he just has monsters behind him. So my lack of confidence on the win right now has nothing to do with him. More of the fact that he has killers behind him who are in attack mode. They are chasing. Very few people like to be chased, but he seems to be in attack mode himself. So I can't call it, Kirk. I truly can't. But it would not take much to convince me to throw the money in on him right now.
Now, do you know what this is reminiscent of to me is, I want to say 2018. I could be mistaken on the year, which would be Ryan Kent's victory at the second place finish at the North American Championships in West Virginia. And you just remember how strong he looked because I'd say they're very similar athletes, that they are like little more muscular, great foot to ground power, and somehow just are able to turn it over on some of these longer events. And again, I just get that same like level of confidence out of both of them, and this is giving me those like a little bit of deja vu.
Yeah, well, look at this cameraman. So the cameraman that we're watching right now is walking back on course towards second place, and we have not seen second place yet. We can see Ryland on a different screen. Now we see him again live, and we have still not seen second place as our cameraman walks backwards on the course right now to find second place. So right now we're talking at least a minute at this point. Ryland's up, maybe more. Second place, still a ghost town, fellas. Still a ghost town.
I would say 2 minutes at least. And Sean Stevens
Looks
Whale
like-
is the one that we've mentioned in second place.
Wow.
Sean in second, confirmed?
That is what we just heard from the cameraman. But that is, to say that is shocking is, I think, an understatement. Not that I wasn't incredibly confident in his abilities at this race, but this is a deep field, and this would be the best finish of his at any of the major races, let alone a championship race.
Oh, fellas, Ryland can take a nap right now if he wants to. This is incredible.
I think he has this locked up.
He's
Barring
30
major
burpee cushion right
catastrophe.
now. He's a 30 burpee cushion at least right now.
He might have a 60 burpee cushion. As we see our second athlete coming through, it looks like. All right, now we have a cluster of athletes, it looks like. The question is who?
Gentlemen, we were talking about Ryland Shadig at an hour 41, and we're at an hour 44 right now, for reference.
That's what I'm saying. This is a 3-minute gap. And that is Sean Stevens-Weld looking really smooth.
On the preview podcast this week, I said that I'm a huge believer in Sean as a fan of the sport, but in wearing the commentator hat, I had to wonder when and if we were going to see him put it all together. Because he has the climbing, he has the physical strength, he has the foot speed. We just haven't seen that statement performance yet. And here we are 48 hours later. This is even if it goes south from here, to me, this is already his statement performance. We've seen him climb well in Tahoe and not finish it off. He's now climbed, descended, and he's still in the mix.
And Sean Stevens-Wales, for those of you who don't know,
And then Hawk Call.
has spent the last 2 weeks out here in Kelowna getting to know the mountain, doing his training on this terrain in this general area. So you talk about a man showing up with all the arrows in his quiver and the know-how of the area. Sean Stevens-Wales has earned the second place current positioning due to his study, due to his dedication, due to his time out on this exact terrain in this location. That is powerful. That is very powerful. So he had a great lead up into this race that I don't think a lot of people know about.
And had I been betting here, I would have bet that since Hawk was no longer anywhere near Ryland, he was going to be just plummeting backwards through the field. Instead, he's right on Sean, and Ryan Atkins is nowhere to be seen, which means that it's less about Hawk fading right now, and Ryland's really just putting on a performance. He's pulling away. Hawk's running well. If Ryan hasn't been able to go and run him down, it's not on Hawk. It's about Ryland.
Part of me wonders if we missed Atkins in that broken footage there. I'm wondering if we missed him.
Either way, what we're seeing out of Shadig is a huge leap forward in his fitness and his performance. This might be Atkins coming up. Yeah, Ryan's coming right now. So you're seeing. I would not call this a changing of the guard because Ryan Atkins is going to be there regardless. But I would say this is the moment of true emergence for Ryland Shadig, where you are now putting him into the category of athletes who you have to account for at every single event that he shows up to.
I agree. Brief update on the female side. Through the 13K mark now, 7th place, Jamie Brusa, 8, Margaret Jensen, 9, Monica Homewood, 10, Ashley O'Hara, 11, Elizabeth Murray, 12, Natalie Miano, and 13, Kayla Brass are all through. We are waiting on, in theory, Sherry Boyle and Teresa Chikova next. But the vast majority of the field is now through the 13K mark, and not really much switch up in the order between the Stairway to Sparta and the Tyro Traverse.
My curiosity here is going to be how close Mick Girillo has been able to stay to Ryan Atkins, because it felt like there was a bit of a gap after Mick and Ryan back to 6th and 7th place. Seems like the break happened after Mick and Ryan's battle. So my curiosity is Mick still within striking distance for a top 5 position?
Well, this gap is getting significant. You said it was 145. Is that right?
When we started talking about Ryland, it was 141.
And then the next group came through at 44-ish, 44 high.
Correct. That's correct.
And now we're talking 48 high coming up on 49. We have our podium. The positions could switch.
Obstacle. I mean, there are 11 obstacles still to go. I just want to point that out. There's a lot of distance. There are 11 obstacles left, but we are getting deep into this thing. If we can get the map thrown up there for a sec, that would be fun to break down a few things, because we just saw Atlas Carry, which is obstacle 15.
Yeah.
So here's what
Guys,
we
can
have next.
I remind you? Can I remind
Yeah,
you
go
that
ahead.
our race leader, Rylan Shadig, missed his spear and is still winning by 3 minutes? Can I just remind you guys of that
Well,
for a real quick second?
I'd
Remember
like
that?
to remind you that the top 3 men all missed their spear, and Hawk Call is still sitting in third after missing a spear as well.
That's true. I'm just saying that's not often in the men's field, but you're right. There was a bit of a mishap there, but nonetheless, still a lead after a miss. But you'd think somebody else would have jumped in and taken advantage on bridging that gap, and nobody was able to because some people hit behind that lead 3. So good point there, David. Though, what were you going to say, Bracken?
Well, we just saw Armor and Atlas carry. That leaves left here the multi-rig, Helix, Sandbag carry number 2, the box, Herc hoist, beater, rope climb, vertical cargo, A-frame cargo, twister, inverted wall. Now, that is a lot of obstacles. I would say probably only someone could fall off the rig today, absolutely. Beater, someone could fall off beater, but most likely you have one failable obstacle, but you have a lot of strength in there, which means that Sean Stevens Whale and Hawk Call, that battle for third, might lean towards Sean. Or sorry, yeah, for second. That leans towards Sean rather than Hawk.
You know, it's not really a ton of failable stuff. Maybe Twister, but in the grand scheme of things, I think running is going to play a bigger factor than any of the obstacles from here on out. Sometimes the box, especially if it's a little damp, sometimes the box can be weird for people.
Herc hoist, if it's been rained on with Hawk.
Yeah, he's had his issues with it in the past, but he's gotten much stronger.
Mm-hmm. But we haven't seen him trashed at a Herc hoist since that day, and this one's been rained on.
Looks like we have Mick Girillo in 5th, as I was wondering. I believe that's him.
I mean, we're talking about a 10-minute difference between Rylan. Rylan came through here 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, you know, Hawk, speaking of Hawk's strength, you know, when Hawk was having mishaps with the Herc hoist, making a few little tactical errors, you guys got to remember he was also a full-time collegiate cross-country and track athlete. The Spartan stuff was a by the way. The Spartan was for funsies. Spartan isn't for funsies anymore. We hope he's having fun out there, but now he can devote his time to those ancillary pieces of this game. And I just don't see, I know it's easy to speculate about Hawk being, in quotes, not as strong as some of the other athletes or maybe not as proficient. Well, he just won Utah, and he didn't have any issues in Utah whatsoever. So I just don't see them being any glimpses that he hasn't had a chance to work on this season now that he's not a collegiate athlete anymore. Right. So I don't think his odds are any worse than anybody else's.
Here's Shadeg right now running with the old classic Spartan pancakes that they've brought back for the sandbag carry. And, I mean, does this look like a man who's slowing down? To me, the battle, the story is right here. It's Hawk Call and Sean Stevens Whale.
Mm-hmm. And there's your talk about running's going to play out. It's happening. Hawk's back up, leading him a little bit. Got through, and that rig there at the end gets tricky, and he got through it, and now he's probably going to have a 15-second gap, maybe 10.
Well, we just talked about obstacle efficiency and worrying about Hawk, and he went through that twice as quick as Sean. And I'm going to point out, when Rylan was on Helix right here, Rylan came through at 150 flat. And these guys are on here at about 153 flat. So the gap is almost exactly 3 minutes right now between Rylan and Chase Pack, which again affords Rylan to take a nap at any point he would like.
Well,
the only thing here,
again.
The issue is, it was closer to 4 minutes, and now it's 3 flat. Now, maybe our math was off a little bit that first time, but these two are working together and racing each other. If you're in the lead, you want single people chasing you. You do not want people working together. And you know that Hawk doesn't have that piece of his mind that will allow him to relax. And Sean's staring at the biggest podium spot of his life. They both have a lot on the line and a big reason to fight each other tooth and nail. Now, 3 minutes is a ton of time, but I don't think it's relaxed time quite yet.
Is that Ryan Woods? Yeah.
It is.
Got a little Ryan Woods sighting right here.
What did Hawk Call say to us?
Ryan Woods.
Yeah, Hawk Hall said to us that he is the fastest descender in this sport, and he didn't even blink when he said it, right? Hawk said, I am the fastest climber, and heck, I might even be even better on the descents. And so you're right, Bracken, if you got a Hawk Hall chasing you on a descent, there is a chance for time to be made up, but at this point, the blood is coming out of too many places right now for the guys chasing Ryland.
It is, and Ryland just took
20th
time.
obstacle.
Yeah. He's faster
Yeah,
over
he did. I mean,
box
he did-
than they're going to be. He's faster on Herkhoist than they're going to be. I just think that his lead is, I think it's too big, but at the same time, Hawk's going to be running faster in between these sections than he is.
He's taking his time. He's trying to not make mistakes. He's willing to give up time here and there to not have any major damage, right? As you see, he rubbed that dirt into his hands before beater. He's doing the reverse grip. He's not trying to go fast through those things. He's walking into it. He's taking that deep breath. He's going, I'm not doing 30 burpees right now, not with a lead, especially when he doesn't know what his lead is. He knows he's way out there, but you don't know if you're a minute and a half ahead or 3 minutes ahead. How would you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish we had a
This
status
man's
meter
always
above their heads. I would love to know how much Ryland has in the tank. Like, is he on fumes? Is this Ryland cracking, or is this Ryland trying to hold it together, or is this Ryland in cruise control because he's got so much left? I'd love to know what the odds of him finishing out versus finishing poorly are going to be.
Ryland is not allowed to crack. At this point, you either die on that mountain or you win. Cracking is not an option at this point, Ryland. Not that you can hear me. And for those of you who are wondering, you saw Ryland rub his hand in the dirt, as David alluded to. The reason he did that is to dry off any sweat on his hands, and it also acts as a bit of a grip like sandpaper once you grab the slick metal. And if what you just watched that car that drove by to the right of Ryland spitting water, that road is completely soaked. I don't know if you guys caught that, but the road is soaked. Obviously, it's rain, so all those obstacles are wet. Very savvy move and really good to do if any of you out there in your next race have some wet obstacles. If you have somewhat dry sand, can act as grip for some of those slick metal obstacles.
Now, Shadeg did just take that peek over his shoulder. He wants to know, okay, is my lead safe? And then he goes straight. When he saw no one was there, he went straight to a few power hiking strides. So, he's hurting, but he's also looking at, okay, I need to conserve energy. I need to stay controlled. And the next time we see him at an obstacle, it will be inside the village itself, which he's approaching right now for the rope climb.
Guys, he's hurting, and he deserves to be. Yeah. He is 2 hours into a brutal race, but he has a bit of a spring in his step normally, and he's trudging, but he is on it. He has built up his 3-minute gap. To me, visually, he's clearly hurting, but man, he has earned this level of pain, and this is going to be a fantastic memory. If he makes it through this all the way to the finish, he has earned every ounce of this agony here.
And you see some more hiking going on right here. This is something you will not see out of Hawk and Sean Stevens Whale right now. Is when they hit this part, they're going to run every step. But their priorities are different.
15% grade there.
They have to go to war with each other through this section. He needs to get to the point where he makes no mistakes. And that's a different mentality.
Yeah. And I didn't get an exact timestamp on this, but we saw Atkins go by, and I can tell you this is a subjective measure of time, but he definitely closed that gap, I believe, on Hawk and Sean Stevens Whale. When they flashed him on the camera, it was shorter than the time previously. So I think Atkins is moving the right direction. And I believe in some broken footage, we got a quick glimpse of Mick in 5th still. So I believe we're looking at Ryland, Hawk, Sean Stevens Whale, Ryan Atkins, and then Mick in 5th still, I believe is where we're at.
And I believe
and as much as we're giving... Go on.
This is that section of the course that Jack Bauer talked about where you go up and then you come down the most technical descent of the entire course. He said that it's just felled trees, waist-high grass. Now the ultra crowd has gone through already, but that is the type of terrain where if your legs are mush, it is really hard to move with pace through there. It's not like a fire road where you can just let gravity work a little bit. You have to intentionally push it through that section. So I'm not spelling doom and gloom for anyone, but if you have a weakness in that section, a hard charging athlete will catch you.
Yeah, and we know Hawk Call is going to bring it there. And we know that Ryan Atkins is going to send it there. So, I mean, if you are Rylan Shadegg, you are excited. And, I always say when you're leading a race, you run like you have wings on your feet, right? You are able to do things you would not normally be able to do. But there's got to be a level of terror to it. Not just joy, but terror, knowing who is chasing you.
Well, let's put this now, just to put the perspective that the performance Rylan Shadegg is going with up front. We just saw Mick Girillo get off the rig in 5th place. He just hopped on Helix at 1:59, almost 2 hours flat. He's over 9 minutes behind Rylan right now, and that's 5th position. There's a 9-minute gap at this checkpoint between 1st and 5th on the men's side. Fellas, that's unheard of, I feel like. Even in a mountain race for the North American champs, that's a big gap, boys.
Kirk, we've got Jack Bauer. Looks like he's got something he wants to fill us in on. Jack.
See Hawk Call coming up that hill. He's probably 2 minutes behind Rylan. Rylan had stuff in the tank. We were going downhill, 4:30, 4:35 pace. Or that was my pace, and he got me. Like, Rylan was going so fast down those hills. I think he's got it in the bag. He took his time on beater. He's definitely trying to avoid any burpees at this point. But I'm going to get Hawk. He's literally right here, and I see another shirtless person, maybe Sean Stevens Will, right behind him. So I'll get him.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. We were noticing that Shadegg, even as tired as he is, he was putting distance between himself and Jack.
And that those time gaps, though, are closing up. That was 10 minutes that they had on Mick, and now it's 9. It was 4 minutes and then 3 and 3 minutes, and now it's 2 on the chase pack. So I don't believe there is enough time. There's just not enough real estate left, but they absolutely are they've taken back 2 minutes in the last, probably 12 to 13 minutes of racing.
Fellas, to interject,
question.
I'm looking at the map. We're only a K out from the finish line after rope climb. There's no time.
There's not enough time.
It would require a mistake. And so for Shadegg, again, he is not racing the field anymore. He is racing to avoid mistakes.
Oh, Josiah.
If he just continues trudging forward. Oh, Josiah managed to get that bell.
That rarely works out when they swing.
He fought for that.
Well,
he
he's
chicken
moved up
winged
the
the
field.
bar and fought for it.
He's moved up a lot. He was in 13th when we were last talking about him. Now he's definitely in the top 10.
I'm going to check results again here. But Hawk is running where Rylan was, although Rylan's moving again, guys.
Yeah, Rylan's moving fast enough. He knows the finish. You know what happens. You start hearing that festival area, and you get that little pick-me-up of hearing that sound system in the distance, and you know you can surge it home from there.
And he's at the point now where you're letting gravity do the work. And not saying it's easy, but he's still going downhill, and you can maintain a higher percentage of your top-end ability going downhill. And so it's just harder to reel in guys that are good descenders already going downhill towards the end of a race. Just can't make up that much time on a guy like him.
There's Josh Fry coming through, who's having himself a heck of a race for the second straight year at North American Championships.
That's what I was going to say. I believe Josh Fry finished 6th or 8th last year at North American Champs.
Yes, he
this
finished
Brendan?
just behind Lars Arneson.
Just behind Lars, right? Yeah.
Yep, who's a phenomenal athlete.
There was a good battle between him and Josh Reed and Mark Gaudet last year at North American Champs, and it was all decided over at the tire flip of all places.
I think we just had an Emma Cook Clark sighting approaching Atlas.
You are correct. So we've got Emma Cook Clark in the lead at Atlas. This could be her day. She is the defending champ. No Lindsay Webster yet.
Yeah, let's watch the clock.
Just
go.
getting on the road.
Let's call it 15 seconds so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, she left at like 58 flat, 158.
And she's on a different camera right now, but she's coming.
So Lindsay's just arriving at
30 seconds on the head. Lindsay Webster's back. 30 seconds
Let's
on
call
the
it.
head.
Let's call it 45 because she's got to finish the carry. So
Sure.
here's Twister. This is what we were talking about for Rylan Shadegg. Rylan Shadegg now just needs to do this clean. That's all he needs. Is the 25th of 26 obstacles. And you're looking at a man who's about to bring home the title.
This is
Well
dominance.
done.
Rylan
young
Shadegg
man.
is going to cross your finish line as your new North American champion 2022 here in Kelowna. Rylan Shadegg. What a performance.
He's going to get that respect now.
Oh, he's got the respect. Look at him.
Everything.
He's got more in the tank
How'd it
still.
feel?
Around mile 9, mile 10, before I failed the multi-rig, I was like, finally, like a lot of people have told me throughout my injuries and stuff that maybe like God's telling me to stop, but I knew that like in here, he wanted me to keep going. Like he made me to race, and I just had to like keep trying. And now my tendonitis is gone, and finally been able to string together some training. And although I got this, like without him, without my health, without injuries, like that's all him. I can't do anything without that. So all glory to him.
Good job, brother.
I had a really good time. That's a sick course. I've been waiting for that all year.
Appreciate it. Good job.
He is a man of faith,
Man,
and he
that's a
gets his strength through God. And I think that's evident right there. That was a dominance performance. I have never seen Rylan take credit for his performance, not one time. He always gives thanks to somebody else.
I mean, that's a guy that's put in a lot of work, a lot of time. And he's got a lot of gifts, and we're getting to see a lot of young talent really shine through. The rising stars of this sport. The sport is in good hands because you still have guys like this guy right here, Ryan Atkins, who's sitting in fourth. But you have Hawk Call and you have Rylan Shadegg on the men's side emerging, and VJ. And then on the women's side, Emma Cook-Clark, and soon the return of Nicole Miracle. The sport is in a very good place.
Oh, it is. And you know what? This Abu Dhabi World Championship is going to be wild. You just have no clue what you're getting. But there are some gentlemen in this sport right now who would be really, really hoping that Tahoe gets the call next year again. You look at Rylan, you look at Hawk. Think of the type of battle we'd have with them getting to go up against Atkins and Albin on that type of course.
Love to see it. Did he mention now? Maybe I misheard, fellas, but did Rylan say he failed multi-rig, or did we mishear that?
That's what I heard, which is an insane thing to think that 2 failed obstacles and a win this big still. I mean, it has been a bit of a sloppy mess for everybody. As you can see, Hawk Call making his way into the Twister obstacle right now. So he has stretched away from Sean Stevens' Whale. Certainly had a kick, didn't he?
Now, if he did fail another obstacle, that would explain why that time gap was getting closer and closer.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's going to be a wrap for Hawk Call. The Young Guns, fellas. What do we think?
Second place at the North American Championships for Hawk Call. This is quite a back-to-back performance for the young guy. This is an amazing finish, and I think at a championship race, certainly thrilling to see. This is the future of the sport, these two guys right here.
You know, it's funny you use the word future. I was going to say, some might say we're looking at the future of the sport, but a smart man would say we're looking at the sport right now.
We're looking at the present.
And there you go. There you go on me, David. Ruining my statement.
I'm sorry there, Kirk, but look at this. Sean Stevens, Wales, comes in a relative unknown outside of the diehards in this sport and is going to leave today with third place in the North American Championships. Sean Stevens, Whale, first Canadian.
Unbelievable.
What a performance.
We called for it
What
this
a
week.
performance.
He delivered. Biggest race of his career, biggest performance. Fantastic. Congratulations, Sean. We're pumped for you.
It was
Way to represent.
perfect venue, perfect conditions, and he had his perfect day. It was the stars aligned for him, and the guys put in the work. congratulations, Sean Stevens Whale.
It's not
Now, just
often
imagine.
you see Ryan Atkins not win. It's less often you see Ryan Atkins not be the top Canadian.
Yeah. Imagine
It's
if
especially
anyone
less
in that
often you
top
see him-
3 or 4 makes a spear.
It changes
Oh my
everything.
goodness.
But what's incredible
They're
is,
all
I mean,
kicking themselves.
we're looking at a day where Ryan Atkins is not even on the podium. I mean, 3 men beat the world champion at the North American Championships, and that just goes to show you how deep this field is.
When's the last time he missed a podium at a championship race? Worlds in Tahoe one
He
year,
had
did
a
he take
fo-
4th?
He had a 4th place finish in one of the years in Tahoe and a bunch of seconds.
We do have the third place woman coming through one of our cameras here, which I think we'll get an eye on real quick so we can get a check in there.
Yeah, I'd like to jump to the women's race. I would love to see it, but I think that right now, is that Emma Cook Clark? At the
No, this is
multi-rig.
going to be, yeah, this is going to be a tough finish when she gets to these ropes at the end here.
Oh, that's not Emma Cook Clark, so we don't have to
No.
worry about that. Fuzzy camera.
When she gets there,
I
I
just saw long shorts.
I think we're going to see some struggles on this rig.
So here's our third.
Well,
is this our
so-
third woman here that we have a camera on? I'm trying to dissect this
It's Annie
pixelated image
Doobie
here.
if it is.
There we go. It should be.
Should be Annie Doobie sitting in third. That's unfortunate that we didn't have the shot there. No, I do want to continue with what you were saying, Bracken, and that is that the women's that we saw Sean Stevens Whale have to chicken wing on the pipe that was hanging from the multi-rig. And then of course you have those those hanging ropes, the nunchuck grip. And
Now,
it's
is this
extremely
Emma?
difficult. Now this is Emma excuse me, this is Emma Cook Clark. And these right here are a very difficult transition when they are slick and wet. So
This
is
could be
where
the
we need
race
her.
right here.
This is,
It's
yeah.
massive
This
for
could
her.
be the race. 'Cause
Hold-
Lindsay can get this.
She's got to get that thing
Lindsay
rocking.
will get this.
And
Even if she makes it at
doing
this
her
point,
best
she's
this
just
morning.
lost 10 seconds.
Oh, it's not going to happen.
She's going to have
She
to
needs momentum.
remount the
Lost her
pipe and
momentum.
start over. She's going to go
Lost
back on
her
the
momentum.
pipes. She's going to try
I
to
hope it
get a better
happens.
grip and lead with her other hand.
Oh, boys. We got a race, fellas.
There it is.
Lindsay Webster has arrived, and Emma Cook Clark has just
Penalty
failed the
loop.
multi-rig.
It is a penalty loop.
Well, that does change things. It's not burpees, but Lindsay Webster's going to need to both complete this and complete it quickly because it is only
See
a
what
penalty
she
loop,
did?
and this is the hard part.
She got above that rope and grabbed the knot, and that's what Emma could not get done. Easy. That was the technique.
And now you have a new race leader out there on the course, just barely, and Lindsay Webster has just hung around close enough to put herself in a position to capitalize on a mistake from Emma Cook Clark.
Now we're going to find out
But this
how
is not
long
over.
and nasty this penalty loop is, because sometimes it's about 100 meters, sometimes it's closer to 250, 300 meters. When does she
If
emerge
it's
back
anything
into
like the
traffic
World
after this?
Championship, if it's anything like the World Championships, which went straight up the side of a sand dune, Emma Cook Clark took a 4-minute penalty on that penalty loop that day. That's what kept her off of the podium. So it is very possible that she'll emerge in a moment, and it's very possible that it could be minutes.
And it looks like it's going
What
to
do you-
be
What?
hill-based.
What are you thinking if you're Emma Cook Clark right now? Okay, we're getting dialed in. What is your last match? What are you doing if you're Emma Cook Clark right now? What are your options?
Here she is.
Send it. What else does she have? Go defend your title. You know, we're
Yeah,
looking
the
at
panic button
maybe
gets
she's
pushed.
40 seconds back. This is the time to burn those matches, right, Bracken?
Yeah, there's no sense saving anything. At this point, she has to go full out, send it, and if there is anything left, she's got to burn it out on the run, which, again, puts it right back in Lindsay's wheelhouse because Then Lindsay gets a tired Emma if Emma does catch back up.
Spears behind us. Really, the only failable obstacle remaining is Twister.
There's Beater.
But there's Beater.
And,
We
yeah,
saw
Beater
a
and
90
Twister.
second. We saw a 90-second shift from that failure on that obstacle. I would say she lost about 30 seconds on the obstacle itself, and then another minute on that penalty loop.
It's been everything we
Yeah, the
wanted
top-
in this showdown.
And if we could maybe get a shot of... Oh, yeah, here we are. We're down near the festival area, so this is where the last remaining showdown for your top women is going to be. And the gap has closed dramatically. Lindsay Webster now in the lead with Emma Cook-Clark chasing if you're just joining us. This is where the race is going to get really good.
It's hard not to feel deflated if you're Emma, right? I mean, she basically worked hard for that lead and lost it, and we only have minutes of racing left. And something you don't often talk about, we allude at it once in a while, but just the energy shift and the shot of life. Lindsay just got a injection right in her arm of adrenaline that's going to carry her through the rest of the race, no matter how tired she is. And that adrenaline was sucked right out of Emma when Emma failed that and had to run the penalty loop. So you not only have a shift in time, right? You got 30 to 45 second gap now, but you got to talk about just like the intangible emotional shift that happens in those two athletes. And if you're an athlete like Lindsay Webster and you're tenured, you twist the knife right now, which means you sell out through the finish line no matter what. And I just don't see it coming back.
Right here. I've got Lindsay.
Absolutely. And we've got Jack Bauer here with eyes on Lindsay Webster. Lindsay Webster's coming into the festival. Now, it's one thing that I will say, I tell this to people all the time. When you are chasing and you're getting dropped, just keep chasing, just keep chasing. Don't take your foot off the gas, because you never know when something like that might happen, where the person in front of you has a 90-second to 2-minute mistake, and then you're there, the door's still open to capitalize. Now here's Lindsay Webster with the lead, a very familiar place for herself.
And she's running with purpose here. She knows exactly what's happening behind her.
How many times have we seen Emma Cook-Clark lay on a silver platter to Lindsay Webster a victory? It's the third time this year, fellas. How many times have we seen Lindsay Webster lay on a silver platter any gift to Emma Cook-Clark? Never.
No.
If history
Well, and that's
repeats
the big
itself,
difference.
this race has been decided.
That's the big difference between the Lindsay Webster of today and the Lindsay Webster of 4 years ago, where she was winning despite her mistakes 4 years ago. And now, even as the field has gotten deeper, she is winning because she is both an incredible athlete and she has cleaned up the mistakes, and she is capitalizing on the mistakes of
Oh
others.
my goodness. This hoist looks legitimate. This is a
this looks hard.
heavy hoist.
It's
Lindsay
been rained
is
on. You know
struggling.
that the impact of rain is massive. She just has got to keep using her legs, hiking it back.
There it is.
Oof.
So
Let's
Lindsay
see what
Webster
Emma
is
has
at
here.
least one hoist ahead.
She left at 12:27.
Now remember, those bars are wet. We saw rain on the road earlier, so they must be a little wet.
Oh, so this is the one cautious point, and Lindsay Webster is through. And now is a good time to remind you that this is a copyright broadcast presented by Spartan and the OCR Report. It may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of the OCR Report.
She looks good, boys. She looks really good. She's moving as fast as Ryland was in this section. And that's not a slight at Ryland. It's true. She's moving just as quickly as Ryland, I feel, was here at the end, in my opinion.
All that sky running, it's really prepared her.
And we're watching the best to ever do it. When you go and gun for the top, you can't miss. And Emma has every chance to go down as one of the greatest to ever do it. She's living in the era of the greatest, and it doesn't allow for any room for mistakes. It just really doesn't. This is how good Lindsay is. You can't miss.
Doesn't this feel like the old Tiger Woods effect? When you'd come into a Sunday and Tiger Woods would be sitting in second place, a stroke back, and guys would just cough these matches up. He'd be 2-3 strokes back, but they know Tiger's lurking in that red shirt, and then they would just cough up their leads and shoot a 6 over on the final day, and he would just stroll to victory. It feels that way, doesn't it? Not just her ability to close, but that other athletes, when they have her on the ropes, they just don't capitalize.
I didn't hear it on the broadcast yet.
She's asking on updates on Emma.
She wants to know. I mean, look, that's how shook Emma had her. If there's one athlete that she fears right now, it's Emma Cook-Clark.
And she knows Emma, if she has any juice in the tank, can run powerfully up this entire slope here. And that's disconcerting when you're at the end of a race like this.
I mean, this one climb is the reason this race is not over. This climb is still, you could lose 30 seconds on this climb.
We must not have had eyes on beater for Emma. She must be there by now. But my concern is that she wasted so much energy in that lock-off hold on the rig that now coming back on a slightly slippery beater is going to make it's like a compounding interest. Once you fail one thing and you fight through failing one thing, it's just like now you're paying dividends on the next thing, and they can get slippery real quick as far as losing power on those things. Looks like Lindsay went off course.
Webster's still moving.
Is it possible for this cameraman to turn and look back and get us a visual on if there's a chase occurring?
I don't see Emma Cook-Clark in that shot, but great work from the cameraman. Well, Lindsay Webster still has to get through Twister. She's looking back, so she's hurting. She wants to know, when is this over?
It's such a nasty way to finish. In Spartan race, we almost never finish uphill. Now, the festival ground area itself is going to be slightly downhill. That's true. But the fact that this resort, this ski lodge here, sits part of the way up the mountain means this is the only uphillish finish I've ever seen at a Spartan race.
Oh. I mean, it is just such a kick in the teeth to finish with something like this.
Well, she's looked back about 4 or 5 times now. So that, one, that means one, she's in pain, and 2, she's got somebody on her mind. That's for sure. But I believe she crests this, and then they get that kind of gradual downhill into the final little gauntlet, I believe.
Big descent from here. Now, is a regular Spartan race not hard enough for you? The Spartan Ultra World Championship is a 24-hour race at Lake Tahoe, California, run 24 hours on one of the hardest courses of the year at the Ultra World Championship, September 24th. More info online at Spartan.com. Go be a world champion like this woman right here.
These hills right now at the end of the race feel like they're never ending. And 5% grade feels like 15% grade. 15% grade feels like 30% grade. Your power hiking grades that you were running earlier in the race, it's like the whole world is on your shoulders and you have a piano on your back and you are redlined. It's that point in the race where if somebody came up and made a move on you, you probably wouldn't have a response. This very feeling when you're forced to climb towards the end is probably the most horrendous feeling in the sport, I would say. She seems to be handling it pretty well, David.
Here's Emma right here, and she is not that far behind, She's moving up this, I would say, quicker than Webster was. So she's still trying to make this a race. But the gap's a solid minute at least.
She looks good. She's still got power. That would lead me to believe she got through beater because she wouldn't be that close, I think, if she failed beater.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, Kirk, what you were mentioning, the fatigue level and how exhausted you are and how much harder it is. You're fighting two separate things. One of them is you're fighting the fatigue levels, the depletion. You get past 2 hours and your energy stores are pretty much toast. But you're fighting dehydration and you're also fighting cramping. And that's the other thing is if you rev it too hard at this point, the muscles will go. They can cramp up, and all of a sudden you are not going anywhere.
And Emma's further back than we think now. She's continuing this climb. And Jack, I think, has a secret language with us behind the camera, and he gave us the thumbs down, which I believe is meaning what I said was wrong. So I think his thumbs up, which he will give us, will mean that she did misbeat her.
Yep. You didn't see it, but he gave us a thumbs up. And, you did see it. Picture in picture. Lindsay Webster is charging her way down into this race village. And it's looking like this thing's a wrap because Emma Cook-Clark has just handed her a victory today. 2 failed obstacles right at the end.
We got Chris Rogloski in that lower corner on the rig. And this would be if she is in 3rd place, this would be huge for her. Picking up Annie Doobie. She got to the top of the rope. That is the key to grab above the knot if you're struggling. So she got the biggest step completed.
Wow. Now she's good at obstacles. She's showing it off right there. Can you believe 6 days after Leadville, she's doing this? It's stunning.
It's nonsensical. I don't get it. She's and even that, she stalled out on that rig and then she just regripped, pulled herself all the way up and got it done.
But it doesn't even matter, Bracken, how much fun you're having. The idea of regrouping after a 100-miler with that much vert is just, it's not fathomable. 6 days, and she's back to potentially a podium finish here.
Shred up the paper, Bracken. Shred it up. It's nonsense.
Gentlemen, it's
now,
noon over here,
Clark,
which means the church bells are going like crazy. So I'm going to stay muted as much as possible here.
That's why you keep giving us that signal to keep going. Got it.
We've all been there. If Emma Cook-Clark can just clean up some of these mistakes, she is as dangerous as anyone in the sport. It reminds me of the first year that Nicole Miracle emerged, and we saw that potential. And what excites me the most about next season is that you will have the 3 of them battling. Nicole Miracle will be back in the mix, and who knows, maybe you'll even have Becca Hammond back in the mix as well. Ooh. And then we'll have a depth to the women's field we have never seen. And I'm getting giddy kind of thinking about that.
Oh, it excites me. The prospect of that excites me. I just feel for Emma, and you want to know why? One, she's like one of the Canadian and nicest type, like Canadian nice at its finest. Beyond, she's just such a decent human. And Lindsay Webster is too, of course. And I root for her. But Emma, just at this point, how many times she's kind of shot herself in the foot? You just got to feel for her. And yet she's out there. I guarantee when we watch her cross the finish line, she's going to be all smiles. But you got to think an athlete of this caliber has to be going back to the lab at some point, right? Has to be going back to the lab. And I don't know what she's currently doing to clean up these little mistakes. But I have to imagine at some point, you know what they say, when you walk into the wall 3 times, take the door. And I believe this is Emma Cook-Clark walking into the wall for the 3rd time, which means like find a door and go through it and figure this out, because you could be the dynasty of this sport if you can just fix those few little things. And so I feel for her. I root for her as much as I root for Lindsay. And although second place is great, it's got to be frustrating.
I would say that what she's doing, though, is no different than the first couple years of Lindsay Webster. I would say the same mistakes, the same issues that plagued her. The only difference is that Lindsay Webster didn't have a Lindsay Webster that would just punish her for all of those mistakes. And Emma Cook-Clark will get there. You hope that it could be sooner. Like, we saw a rapid progression from Nicole Miracle, from where she was failing obstacles to being just so proficient and where they were her strength. And Emma Cook-Clark's day will come, but for today, the glory is going to go to this woman right here. She said she was retired. Instead, she adds another championship to the resume. Lindsey Webster, your North American champion in 2022.
She does it again. Is anybody surprised? My goodness.
I think she's surprised.
I
Honestly.
don't think
I think-
she understands what retirement means. I think somebody needs to tell her.
Yes. She's still trying to win. She could still potentially win the entire series. So that is not retired. That is enough races. That requires, what, 4 or 5 races to win the series and the North American Championship? And I guess I would assume she's still racing the World Championships this year.
Bracken and I had this conversation on our podcast earlier this week saying that if Emma was going to win, we were going to bet that it would take a clean course in order to do it. But we put our faith in Lindsey Webster when we made our predictions because we thought that there was a chance for elements and there was a chance for something to get in Emma Cooks-Clark's way. And Lindsey Webster not failing anything would be the difference maker. And Bracken, for once in our lives, I feel like we were right. Way to go, man.
Yeah, blind squirrels, right, Kirk? Here's my takeaway from all of this, though, is I didn't see anyone run downhill faster that final dirt road stretch than Emma today. She looked as faster than most of the men. If we didn't have that hiccup, we were going to see a really interesting finish because she was absolutely flying and extending her stride out, unlike any woman I've seen run downhill in recent memory. So yes, did she take it on the chin a little bit today? Yeah, but she still was full of race at the end. I still think she might even be the favorite for the world championship. She's that good. It's going to be dry. This isn't by no means like a death knell for her season. This to me is encouraging. No. This was terrible conditions for her, and she won't face it again this year.
Look, she was the defending North American champion. Lindsey Webster didn't race last year. This year, Lindsey Webster races, and she still takes second place, right? When all is said and done, she had Webster on the ropes in back-to-back races this past year. When all is said and done, she nearly had her at the World Championships last year. We're looking at an athlete who is just a few little tweaks away from being the best in the sport.
Yeah, we really are. And I didn't get a timestamp, and shame on me for doing that. But there's no way Emma was more than a minute and a half behind Lindsey crossing that finish line. And that's with a failed rig and a failed beater, still within about a minute and a half of Lindsey, which we can both argue that that can easily be and could have been made up.
1 minute, if she had 50 seconds, 150 on the dot between the two of them.
150.
That set of burpees at the spear also could have been the difference. She failed 3 obstacles today, and the two of them were just leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the field today.
We have top 15 men now through the finish line. We had the 15th place finisher, Jacob Klinker, cross with Emma. So when we're done going down live to Jack on the ground here, let's come back and we'll get our top 15 breakdown. Go ahead, Jack.
Hey guys, so you just saw the battle. Obviously that penalty loop after beater is what made the difference. Emma going downhill, she was high 4s, low 5s. You're right. I don't think that anybody who I went with was running faster on that last downhill section. She was still pushing it just in case Lindsey missed twister at the end. Lindsey was looking back a lot. She had more in the tank, finished strong, but on that last little uphill, which was so deceiving, I mean, you're right. You could make up 20, 30 seconds if you just kind of coasted it at that point. She was looking back because she did not want to see Emma in her rearview mirror. But I think she built enough of a cushion with that penalty loop that she had enough of a buffer. But overall, Emma was charging hard, and it's a shame that she didn't clean up her obstacles. But regardless, amazing battle the entire time. Back to you guys.
Gentlemen, ready for some top 10, top 15 breakdown on the male side?
Break it down, Bracken. Break it down.
Rylan Shadig, 204.48. Hawk Call, 208.04. It's over 3 minutes, 8 seconds of victory for them there. And then 50 seconds back, Sean Stevens Whale, 208.54. Ryan Atkins, 209.51. Mick Girillo, 216.33. So that's almost a 7-minute gap from when we saw them on Tyrolean Traverse to the finish. That shows how Ryan was closing here. Ryan Woods, 6th place, 219.50. Brendan Neely, 7th, 220.04. And 8th, Josiah made up 5 spots in the second half of the race, 220.34. Josh Fry, 9th, 220.38, 4 seconds behind Josiah. That must have been a finish there. Austin Azar, 10th, 221.58. Botris, 11th. Jesse Bruce, 12. Jeff Carr, 13. Isaac Sanderson, 14. And Jacob Klinker, 15.
Wow.
That gap between Atkins and Mick is astounding. The way those guys must have closed had to be astronomical, because halfway through that race, Mick and Atkins were together. And it just goes to show on these big mountain courses, when you crack, guess what happens? You crack. And that's just the case.
Well,
of
and
that,
these are
isn't it?
spreads that you don't see spreads like this in most supers, and you don't see spreads like this on really any sort of other terrain. Like, this is only in the mountains that you see this happen.
Yeah, and granted, this was a full 21K. So that certainly helps that spread. But 5 Canadians in the top 10 men. You had Stevens Whale, Atkins, Girillo, Neely, and Austin Azar. Canada represented well on their home turf.
Yeah, and
Who's your
I
hero
think
of
a
the
lot
day?
of Americans would turn around. A lot of Americans would turn around and say, "Hey, that's because we didn't have all the Americans there." No, these Canadians showed out today. And look, we have 3rd place right now, Annie Doobie. 2 hours, 30 minutes into the women's race, bombing into the festival area. I'd say she's back, guys.
I think so.
But I want to go back to talking about this Canadian contingent of men, because between Mick Gurlow and Sean Stevens Whale and obviously Atkins, these guys showed up today. Like, it's hard for me to. Let me say, it's easy to say that Ryan Atkins didn't have a great day. He finished 4th, but he still finished 4th.
We saw this with
one of
the
greats.
Mexico race. In that Mexican race, we had several Mexican athletes go top 10, but we've seen them on U.S. soil be in the 15, 20, 25 range. So they had a great race at altitude on their terrain, but it hadn't necessarily translated over. Every single time we see Sean, Mick, Austin, they're in the mix. It's not that these guys benefited from home cooking. It's that they're that good and we don't see them that often.
My curiosity is if there was a battle between Annie and Chris, because the last check-in we didn't see Annie. We had only seen Chris, assuming she was in 3rd, but we could have been wrong there. I don't know how tight that gap is. I'm very curious to get eyes on Chris.
Earlier, Kirk, the gap had been fairly substantial. I think that we had we talked about that initial surge from those 3 women, the leading 3. And they put a lot of distance between themselves and everyone else pretty early on in this race. And while Annie did get dropped, I think there was a sizable gap between
For somebody
her
who
and
didn't decide they were going to race until Wednesday or Thursday this week, I would say that was a heck of a performance. She was undecided midweek. To come and take 3rd in a championship race, which I assume is she's going to finish this and finish 3rd. How could you ask for a better performance than she's got to be on top of the world right now. I would say she raced beyond her potential today. What do you guys think?
Well, and again, 2nd place at the North American Championships last year for Manny Doobie, and you just added Lindsay Webster to the mix. She finished exactly in the same spot, because just add Lindsay. 3rd place, Annie Doobie at the North American Champs. She's thrilled. You know she's thrilled. At least it wasn't second, I guess, because she was always second.
Well, and with Lindsay and Emma, and Annie not being fully healthy and uncertain if she could even race, let alone get through the terrain, 3rd place is the best possibility today, which means she went out and took care of business perfectly. there was no better finish today for her with what she's been able to do leading up to this than third. So this is a win.
No, absolutely. Now, for the best news, photos, race results, and coverage of the sport of OCR, go to the OCRreport.com. Your OCR headquarters is the OCRreport.com. Check it out now. And speaking of great coverage, we've got Jack Bauer down there with some of your women's top podium finishers. So let's chat with him, Jack. Got to let him take a few photos first. What do you think?
We have Chris Rogloski bombing downhill into the festival area as well, so she wasn't too far back from Annie.
Let's get a shot of Chris if we can. Let's put her up on the screen. I mean, this is a heroic performance from her.
You know what most people do after Leadville? Not a
take a month
thing.
off?
Not a thing.
Well, you know,
I wonder if they're
have you guys run an ultra marathon before? Because usually you want to take at least a week of pure rest.
Looks like Jack wants to chime in here, Jack.
Yeah. Hey, everyone's frozen right now, so Lindsay's gonna warm up. Emma's got a cold, like one of those foil wraps on her, and he's getting one as well. They said in a few minutes they'll talk. They just need to get hotter because it's way too cold.
Okay. We've been there. We understand. Yeah, but I think
Something to note is
with
I was looking back through the results. We did not have any position changes after like the halfway point of this race. I just went back and combed through some of our updates, and it looks like pretty much once these positions got held, they other than Hawk passing Sean Stevens Wales toward the end there, all the positions on
And
the women's
Lindsay.
side held strong. I suppose the Lindsay thing, but as far as any other mishaps, like most people stayed there. Now my point's just garbage, but it didn't seem like a lot of switching around was happening further down the field. It seems like everybody asserted themselves in their general place, and then not much changed from there other than some of these exceptions with these mishaps. It seemed like big gaps formed early, and they just held on to them.
Well, I think what you're saying is true in terms of like the runnability of the terrain. Like hierarchy was established in the first big vertical climb, and then any little major mistakes that were a result of the fatigue of that climb. And then yes, there was minimal change after, let's say, the Tyrolean traverse. So you're spot on, Kirk.
Well, other than all the change-ups that happened that I just, ignored.
Well, in your defense, Emma left burpees from spear throw in second place. So from there on, that they swapped places, but they swapped them right back.
They did. Now, I want to go back and talk about, like, if you've ever run an ultra event before, 50 miles, 100 miles, at that point, I mean, you're splitting hairs. They're very different, but they have massive amount of damage on your body. In my experience, it's been like 4 days before I'm even really walking, right? Let alone trying to prep for a race. And here we have Chris Rogloski running one of the hardest 100-milers on Earth. And she is 6 days later racing hard. I
Just die.
I really can't put into words how impressed I am.
Yeah.
We've got an interview with Annie Doobie, by the way. Jack Bauer with Annie Doobie right now as we're watching Chris Rogloski cross the finish line in 4th place.
Yeah.
What a performance.
We'll just go inside real quick. Emma, do you mind just coming this way? 1 minute.
Looks like they're going inside. Find somewhere quieter.
So
what
does
usually
this
happens
mean?
after an ultra is that after an ultra, you're going to feel like crap for 3, 4, 5 days. Your legs are going to be sore. That's going to leave, and your life energy is going to start coming back, and you're going to be like, I can go run. I can probably do something. You're going to think that about Thursday, Friday after a Saturday ultra. And then what's going to happen to the actually everybody is you're going to go out for a run and you're going to be like, oh my God, 5 minutes in, you're going to be like, I am not ready. Mentally, you might come back. Your life energy might come back. But when you go to work, it doesn't come back. It doesn't come back for weeks. So what she does is absolutely astonishing. I can't wrap my head around it. 2 weeks after an ultra, and I've only done a few 50Ks, I'm worthless. Absolutely worthless at any high-end output. And so for her to do that, I actually can't understand it. We need to talk to her exclusively about recovery between events at some point because it's unmatched.
Here's what it means, Kirk.
Oh,
It
to be
means
25 again.
that we've never seen her at her best. Like for her to come off 100 and take about the same position she took not coming off 100, but coming off of High Rocks Worlds, which was the same position she took coming off of the previous 100 that she ran before the first race of the year, it means we've never even seen her ceiling. She's just consistently sitting at that like 85 to 90% of whatever she could actually do if she were fresh and tapered and like actually working towards a specific race. It means that we have no clue where she should or could be at.
It's fair. And you're right.
So it
You're
looks
right.
like we've got some people inside interviews right now where it's a little warmer. I see Sean Stevens Whale. I see Rylan Shadag.
Okay.
Jack, you got someone to chat with us?
Okay.
We need to hear the
All right,
story
yeah.
behind the story.
Let's just go against like that side. Yes. Okay.
Looks like you're working hard today.
Yeah. All right.
Jack wants to
so I'm
make it
here
real
with
perfect for us.
today's winner, Rylan Shadig, and third place, Sean Stevens Whale. Yeah. All right. So I'm here with Rylan, who won today's race. He's the North American Regional Champion. How do you feel about it?
I'm really excited. I about mile 8, mile 9, I started to get emotional because I just like realized that I finally like feel like I'm at my limit. Like I can train and not worry about injury. Like I feel strong again. At Utah, I went on a couple wildfires a day or two before, and my trachea was irritated, and I was bleeding into my stomach and then throwing it up. So, like I knew that was like not where I should be. So it felt really good to, like I just kept praying last night, like, God, if you want to give me like what I actually can do today, that would be awesome. Like I just want to show myself.
Yeah,
So
it was an amazing
was good.
performance. Got a question for you though. You've
up?
recently been doing some of the DECA events
Yeah.
where they involve ram burpees and some of the functional fitness.
Yeah.
Burpees were a critical moment on the course today. Do you feel like that kind of helped you, power through some of the sections after you started seeing people fail stuff?
Yeah, like I definitely tried to. As soon as I failed the spear, I was the first one, and I was sure everyone else was going to make it. The spears were a little slick, so I threw mine a little too hard. I thought it would slip more, and I just threw it barely over the target. So when I saw Hawk miss his, I was like, oh, maybe I can, like, I was still confident I could bring him back on the descent because I had gapped him a good bit on the descent. And so I was really excited to like just kind of relax into the burpees, not kill myself, and then I knew I had a long descent after that, and I just felt so good descending and have been lately for a long time. My ankles feel good now, so like I feel like I can run, and it's a really good feeling.
They were saying on the broadcast that a lot of people say that you guys, you Hawk, some of the younger guys are the future of the sport, but you're really the present. I mean, look at the last two races. Do you see this being a rivalry for many years to come that you're looking forward to?
I think so. Like Hawk is an incredible runner. On the climb, I was honestly surprised. Like I've been racing the Cirque Series races in Utah where some real runners show up, and I have a hard time staying like on the climbs with some of those like Solomon athletes or the D1 like college kids that show up.
Yeah.
And so I knew Hawk would be hard to stay with, but this course was just like so much fun, and I just kept thinking about how grateful I am to be up here racing. Like I rode my motorcycle up here, so I was a little tight, like my back is really tight, but
Didn't look
I
it
just
today.
felt so good and just like so thankful to be up here.
Awesome. Well, congrats on the win. I'm going to throw it over to Sean. Sean, not drinking your chocolate milk. Gotta get that nutrition in after the race. You made the decision to come to the Kelowna area ahead of the race. How much did that pay off?
Well, finished third today.
Clearly,
I finally had a good race. So
you've kind of been that guy who's everyone's known. If you just put it together, you're eventually going to end up on a major podium, and it worked out today.
Worked today for sure. Yeah.
So what was your strategy heading into the race?
You know what? Altitude's always been a struggle for me, so that was really the decision to come up here.
Okay.
Make sure I was acclimated, because I know, like, as a mountain runner, I've been to the world champs. I know where I compare, and I knew I could like obviously today Ryland and Hawk absolutely crushed it, but I knew I could be up there and running close to them at least.
Yep.
So, I knew the course very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, just run your own race today. Try and have a clean run.
Yep.
If everything goes well, you'll probably be catching and passing people at the end because it is a deceptively hard course, especially with that second, ski hill. Yeah.
Oh, that
second climb just kept going.
Yeah, it's like a 3-part climb where like the middle part there is like a grassy section. You were at the top when you were at the bottom.
I was bear crawling that.
Yeah.
bear crawling it.
Everyone was like just like hands on, just pulling out the grass.
And how about that rain and the cold? Like when you were exposed in that mountain, did
It
that?
just made it so epic.
It really did. Like there was a rainbow once we hit the alpine at the top, and I mean it was kind of like it was a bad day, but it was also the perfect day.
Yeah.
I feel like where the elements came to play, but like not too harshly. Like everyone was kind of able to battle through it.
Yep.
And yeah, fortunately, I think I had the only clean run among the top males and females. It sounds like. So I think that. Yeah, you know,
this is not an easy course to do it on.
That was a hard course. So it was funny because I was Ray Pine Atkins coming to the spear, and I've missed my last 2 spears in Big Bear and Utah, and so I was kind of like, well, let's hope I don't lose too much time in the spear throw. And this was like the one time I actually gained time on the spear, and the ski run going up felt good, and just kind of was able to cruise home.
Awesome. Well, we'll see both of you on the podium in a little bit. Congrats on your finish. I'm going to take it over to Annie if she's got a second. Oh no, you okay to get interviewed?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm here with Annie Doobie, finished 3rd place. You were a little nervous about actually if you were going to show up. What made you you change your mind?
I was just excited about this venue, like a new mountain course that wasn't super high altitude kind of appealed to me. And it was everything I hoped for. It was like super cruisy on that first climb, but like a little bit, mushy and like
your
wet.
shoes are still soaked, probably.
Yeah, I actually my shoe came untied twice on that first climb. Then we get to the top and it's like it was like blustery, super windy. Felt like I was like falling over at points. But like the views were just insane. It felt like a real, like almost like a European mountain course for parts of that. And then could have done without the mid-race dunk wall. Felt a little bit hypothermic for a while. Couldn't feel my legs. And then that second climb, man, it was brutal.
They were talking the 3 stages of it essentially, where they were on all
like
4s.
10 stages. It was never ending, and it was just like so steep and wet that like. You're like taking steps and like sliding down a little bit, but it was good. Like,
with all the crazy terrain, were you nervous about your ankle, or you think you're past that at this point?
I was very nervous. I couldn't like send it on the super technical downhills, which was unfortunate. But
your climbing was
my climbing
was,
was super solid. I think. I almost regret not like pushing that first climb more because I felt so good that I think like had I had a little bit more of a gap, I could have maybe stuck closer to Lindsay and Emma. But you know what? I'm so happy. Like I made it through, and like I feel like not injured. So that's like a huge
rest
win.
of the season, you're gonna go to Blue Mountain hopefully, or
I think so. Yeah, next up OCR Worlds probably, and then hopefully Blue Mountain.
Awesome. Well, you're clearly back, and congrats on the podium.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me get Emma. I think she's over here. Hey, Emma. Do you have a sec for an interview? Awesome.
It's 1 second.
1 sec. Okay, the interview's over. So I'm here with Emma. She got 2nd place, was having an amazing battle all day with Lindsay. Let's just hear kind of break down your race, what was going through your mind at various points. What was
It was super fun to start. I just wanted to keep it conservative at the beginning, especially. I've had a pretty full-on week, so I thought the legs might just like have zero to give. So, and with these courses with elevation and like rough terrain, sometimes things can really get harder as time goes on. So it was fun. Lindsay and I were just chatting with Chris and Annie a little bit, and then just kind of stayed pretty close to everyone, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe there was a little bit of movement, but pretty close. I think Annie was just behind me for that whole first climb.
Yep.
And then Lindsay and I came into the spear together, and we both failed it, which was like unfortunate, but also really good.
It was good that both of you
For
did.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was fine. And then we just kind of worked together on the downs. I think my legs are kind of coming on into the season. End of August. I feel like kind of have some running legs, even with fatigue, which was a really nice feeling. So just kind of was able to cruise on the downs. And
you were running faster than most of the top 5 guys on that last downhill section.
Wow, that was
so like looking at the splits, you were crushing it.
Thanks.
How much did the weather affect things?
I mean, temperature was really nice. I'd say that
nice.
was good. Like,
you're clearly Canadian.
Yeah. And I just love when you're in the mountains, you get like some weather. It makes it feel a bit more there. Then I think I failed multi-rig. I just didn't feel any strength in this arm. I hurt my hand in Utah pretty badly, so I haven't been doing any using it or this
kind
arm
of need
at
to
all.
do.
And then I just need more work on some technique and stuff, so fell off that and killed a lot of time there. And then I think I failed beta too. I think that was almost more mental, you're not gonna do it, you just failed multi-rig, therefore. But it's all good. It was so fun to run a lot of it with Lindsay, and then to just feel strong on the ups and downs and be able to have a bit of a gap. And it's good. I need to do more work on these obstacles, especially when wet, but I'm just a little bit bummed at myself.
We got the battle we were looking for 90% of the race. So fitness is there, and
sure.
Rest of the season we're going to see you two battle amazingly. So congrats on second place.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Hawk, you want to get a quick interview? Last guy got Hawk Call. Second place right here. Was the trip to Canada worth it?
Oh yeah, definitely worth it. It was a beautiful course. It was so much fun. It was a little more cold than I was hoping for. My hands and forearms tightened up a lot quicker than I was hoping they would, which sucks because then I failed the spear throw because of it, and then I also failed the stairway to Sparta, which I was like,
really?
This is
the rock holds?
Ridiculous. Yeah, the rock holds. I couldn't grip them. I jumped up and grabbed it, and just my hand completely opened up. And
you just had no dexterity at that point?
Yeah, I was like, my hands were so cold.
Yeah.
I could not grip anything. But
what was the penalty loop on that looking like?
The penalty loop, it wasn't too bad. It was you went down alongside the road that you went down after the thing. You went down for a bit, and then you just traced back up a little bit, and then you turned around and went back down. So
gotcha.
It wasn't anything super significant, but it was enough that's where Ryland got me. And and then I never caught back up to him, especially with us both missing the spear. And I was like, well, that sucks.
It was a lot of people on even footing because of all the obstacle failures. I think Sean Stevens Whale was the only guy who made it just burpee free or penalty loop free for the whole course at the top of the pack. It was chaos out there. So.
It was chaos. Yeah, it was 30 burpees and a penalty loop. I definitely was not expecting that. I was not expecting to have any problems. But the cold, it was real. It was the first race I've ever done where my hands and body were cold during it.
Yep.
And so a little bit of a learning curve, but it is what it is. So.
Yep. You need one of those experiences to know how to prepare better. Ryan Atkins always talks about, don't make excuses. You know what you're going to get yourself into. So I think a lot of people might address differently if they looked at the weather forecast a little better.
Definitely some gloves would have been nice.
Yep.
Definitely would have been nice.
And then the other question was, you take out races hard. Is that just going to be your MO for the most part?
That's just how I like to do it. I'm a fan of
Prefontaine.
I'm a fan of just putting everyone in the hurt locker right off the bat. And it's most of these races. This one not as much, but all the other races I've done, the gauntlets at the end have usually just been so heavy and gnarly that they like to put all the hardest obstacles in the last quarter mile. And so the biggest gap I can have going into those is key.
Makes sense.
So that's my race plan is get ahead of all the bigger, stronger guys and then hope to carry it out to the end.
Yeah. And what's your plan the rest of the season?
The rest of the season, I've got, I'll come back to Canada for the last series race in October.
You going to drive there this time? Or
no, this time I will be flying,
No 15 hours in the car the day before a race?
15 hours in the car this time, but, and then maybe Worlds, possibly. Cool. I'm still on the fence about that one. Dubai's a long ways away, so I'm it's like a 50-50 shot right now.
Well, with your past few races, I mean, anytime, no matter who shows up, you're always a real threat for the win and podium. So proved it again, and congrats on second place.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, I'll send it back to you guys.
Thanks, Jack. Well, things certainly didn't shake out as anticipated today, and so I think it's time for us to do a real quick recap over how the day went. Let's go with surprises. Surprises, gentlemen.
I mean, we talked about the two-headed monster in both fields. We were going to see Lindsay and Emma, and then we were going to see Hawk or Ryan. And maybe that's short-sightedness on my part, but I didn't say Ryland's name until it was obvious that Ryland's name was supposed to be said. So I'm going to say Ryland's dominance surprised me more than anything else in the field.
That's hard to argue with.
Sure.
Well, you base your predictions on past results, and Sean Stevens-Will, although we knew he was capable, has not yet done it, whereas Ryland has taken a second place in a U.S. National Series race. And seeing Sean Stevens-Will actually come through, kind of like the Ryan Wood syndrome of past, where Ryan always found a way to fail an obstacle and lose a race, and then he cleaned it up. Sean was starting to develop that MO a little bit, Mrs. Spear, as he alluded in his interview, and Sean put everything together today, and I'm going to say he's my biggest surprise. Sean Stevens-Will. First podium will be something he never forgets. Well earned. What about you, David?
I think for me, it was the emergence of different talent at the top on the men's side. And I would say it was the continued heartbreaks for Emma Cook-Clark that I'm waiting for that performance where she turns the corner and doesn't defeat herself. And I know it's coming because the gifts are there. She has gifts at a whole nother level over, I think, the majority of the athletes that have ever raced in this sport. So I'm eager and excited for that one. We're going to show the women's top 5 results while we're on that topic. I think obviously big stunners for me, having just return of Annie Doobie, Chris Roglaski only about 3.5 minutes behind her on a course this long. And Casey Monroe sneaking into the top 5. I mean, this was an exciting women's race today. Just, I think every single one of those people, with the exception of Emma Cook-Clark, is very pleased with how the race panned out for them.
Yeah, this field right here was separated into 2 tiers. The people who all have been up here, won races, won world championships, been on a podium at a regional championship, and then everyone else who has never done those things. And Casey was the best of everyone else today. And that is like the second podium. You can be first, second, or third. That's great. But you can also be the best of the people who didn't have a shot at being first, second, or third. And that is like, it is almost as hard to be the best of everyone else as it is to be the best of the immortals up at the top. So Casey gets my vote for probably second or third best performance out of, regardless of gender.
I mean, absolutely. And let's look forward a moment, because there is one more big race in the North American Elite Series left in this season. It's going to be up in Ontario. And I don't know if you guys have connected the dots on this one yet, but where did Ryan Atkins and Lindsay Webster live for years and years when they first broke into this sport?
Right there.
Ontario. Yeah. So this is terrain. This is terrain they know well. This is, an easy location for them to get to. And I think when we look at I think for Lindsay, it's close out the season, win another title. For Ryan, it's okay. I really need some vindication. I think the fires are going to be burning in him for the next race, and what a great venue for him to do it at.
Yeah, and it's always good, I like to complain about this a little bit living in the Midwest at sea level, but it's always good to bring everybody together for one last race at the end of the year at sea level playing field. Good to see it on Canadian soil again, but there's going to be a lot up for grabs, especially with position shifts on the men's side in particular, with who's going to actually be the series champion, nothing has been officially decided yet. And so we actually have some things, some weighty event coming up in Blue Mountain, which I think is going to be worth the watch, folks.
Yeah, it sets up such a good clash of styles. Hawk Call goes to his first one side of mountain race. Blue Mountain's one of those where you can't cross over the top and race. It happens all on one face of it. And it is a very different style of racing than a normal mountain race. We have Rylan Shodegg, who's going to do his first version of that, but is coming off proving that he's one of the top technical terrain descenders that we've seen in this sport, and he's got all the momentum. You're going to have a disgruntled Atkins on his home turf, really wanting to get back into it. And that's just the men's side. The women's side sets up Emma Lindsay Part 2, Annie with more confidence and a more stable ankle. There's a lot at play at this race that if you look at it being after the North American Championship, it almost could feel like a throwaway race on the season. Like it's like a stop over in between North American Championship and Worlds, but it's not. It's going to be a showpiece race.
It is. And when we look at, I think this could be, like I said, we're waiting for that Emma Cook-Clark breakthrough performance. It might happen here because I think Lindsay Webster is not going to let her do it. She's without a fight at the World Championship race, that's for sure. So it's going to be exciting, everybody. Today was an incredible race. Any parting thoughts before we let the fans go?
I think we had a course worthy of being labeled the North American Championships. I think we saw everything we would like to see. There were some switch-ups. The course and the weather played into the results, which we like to see here in Spartan races. And I think it was an inspired course. And I think the champions crowned truly earned those titles today. There were no gifts given, and I like that.
You know, this course, I think, takes up the mantle of where West Virginia left off, which was West Virginia was one of the most beloved courses amongst athletes in this sport for the range of skills that you needed to run that course and the beauty of that course. And I think we have a worthy successor here with this Whiteface Mountain. So this live race coverage of the 2022 Spartan North American Championships has been a presentation of Spartan and the OCR Report. Thank you for watching. For Bracken Crocker, Kirk DeWint, Jack Bauer, Jason Dupree, I'm David Makita. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you all October 23rd in Ontario for Race 5 of the Spartan North American Elite Series. We'll see you then.